We'll now bring the Council Transportation Committee meeting to order. I'll ask Mr. Valentine if he'll lead us in the prayer, and then we'll do the pledge.
Father, we are thankful for the day which you have given us, Lord God. We ask you blessings upon our meeting tonight. May that give us wisdom, Father, to make decisions for your people. Lord, we ask all these things in your Son's holy name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a special meeting of the Transportation Committee meeting to deal with a 1/2 cents sales tax as proposed in the Parish President's report of the state of the parish. This report announced that he wanted to do a 1/2 cent sales tax, but it was not accompanied by a plan. So the Council Chairman Savoy tasked the Transportation Committee to develop a suitable plan using our engineer consulting's URS. URS has met with most of the councilmen either one-on-one or two at a time to see what their concerns were concerning this project. A meeting with State Senator Jody Amade, Representative Mert Smiley, and Eddie Lambert was held at the state capitol with President Hughes, URS, and myself in attendance. This is where they addressed their concerns. A stakeholder meeting was held at the Holiday Inn and attended by many people from the community. Among those, the sheriff and the superintendent of schools, the chief of police at Sorrento, the mayor of Donaldsonville, and others. And their concerns were presented. So tonight, URS is here to present to the council and to the community their findings of what they have accomplished through the many talks that we've had. They're going to bring us a PowerPoint and show us what direction they think we need to go in. I now turn it over to URS representatives, starting with Mr. Tom Hunt.
All right. Thank you, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We have been obviously working in coordination with the administration as well as the council in trying to develop a list of priorities for consideration for a transportation improvement program for the parish. I'd really like to work under the guidance of this really being more of a workshop than anything. What we have today is really a draft plan. I think it's the first time that we really come forth with a plan. We put something on the table for your consideration. I won't say that it's perfect at this point. We'd like to have further input from y'all. But there has been a lot of discussions with stakeholders in the communities and elected officials and members of administrations and others. And obviously a lot of work has been done prior to us ever being involved in transportation planning in a regional level, a state level, and here in the parish. And the intent was not to recreate the wheel and start from scratch, but it was to utilize a lot of the existing information and documentation and work with key members and stakeholders here within the community to develop this plan. So with that, I have a presentation. I'd like to say it was brief, but unfortunately we have a lot of information to cover. It may take a little bit of time, but I think it kind of sets a precedent for the plan. And then at that point, I would like to go over the draft plan with y'all. And I'll go ahead and get started right now. The parish, I think, is, Ms. Fontenot had noted, the parish is considering implementing a transportation improvement program. Primarily to address transportation deficiencies. The parish is really taking what I would consider a proactive approach in trying to solve their transportation problems with the overall intent to improve the quality of life here in the parish. The real purpose of the meeting here is, number one, we want to discuss some of the existing transportation programs and the status, but really to present the draft transportation program projects that are under consideration, and also to get have a good discussion about the program and see what we can do potentially to improve it. One thing I think everybody is aware of is there's been significant growth here in the parish. You can look at this table that we have, and it shows between 1970 and 2005, the population increased by over approximately 135%, from about 37,000 persons to nearly 90,000 persons. This next slide indicates that if that growth trend continues, we would be probably exceeding 120,000 people in the 25-year horizon. And all indications are that this will probably continue. What I'd like to do now is go through a few slides that I acquired from the Regional Planning Commission. They maintain a travel demand model for this region that shows current traffic levels and congestion levels, and it also projects into the future congestion levels. A portion of Ascension Parish is actually within the Baton Rouge urbanized area. This is pretty typical. In most urban areas, there is a regional travel demand model. I think y'all just became part of the urban model, I think in 1990, I'm not sure. So it doesn't reflect all of the conditions within the parish, but I'll go ahead and try to show it to you right here. The blue and yellow line, the real thick line that you see there, that's Interstate 10. The other section in red parallel interstate is US 61, and I think you can see the section of LA 42 to the north. Obviously, the travel demand model doesn't include much south of I-10. It's basically from I-10 north here in Ascension Parish, and it's a simple map, but I think it's important just when you look at it, the way these models basically read is the red and the orange indicate high levels of congestion. And you can see here, relevant to congested routes, US 61 Airline Highway under current conditions has significant congestion. LA 44 north from the interstate north is showing significant congestion. Portions of LA 42, LA 73, LA 30, and LA 22. And I think all these projects came up numerous times in our discussions. And this just reiterates those routes that were congested relevant to the model under current conditions. This next slide indicates 2010 conditions, and now you start to see continuing deterioration of those same routes, plus the interstate starts to become congested. And then we take it one more level, and you can see here's a 2030 description of the region, and there's significantly more red in that version than in the current conditions. And when you really look at it, what's happening is by 2030, all the routes that are currently congested would continue to deteriorate, and the level of service would continue to go down. In addition, the interstate system itself would become very congested, similar to what it is in the urban areas of Baton Rouge. LA 74, 431, and 621 would all become or reach their capacity. So relevant to transportation, there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done to help address this projected congestion problem, well, both the existing and projected problem. When you look at currently, well, if you look at the projects over the last 4 years that's been implemented in the parish, relevant to federal and state funds, there's been about $22 million worth of expenditures. 21 projects, $22 million worth. This is difficult to read unless you have a monitor right in front of you, but it shows all of these different projects, these 21 projects that have been implemented in the parish over the last 4 years. What's interesting is the majority are overlays, soil cement and overlay, minor overlay, rehabilitation type projects, asphalt surface treatment, more in line with what we would consider maintenance type projects. That's not bad. We have to maintain the system that we have is very important. But the key is, from a capacity standpoint, there's really only 2 projects in here, and one was the Airline Highway near Walmart where they added some travel lanes, and the other section was the 3-laning of a section of LA 73. So very few capacity projects. This map indicates where those projects were implemented, and the majority of these, again, are maintenance-type projects. This exhibit is showing the current lane configuration within the parish. And I think what's interesting here is we're showing where we have the 4-lane routes are the routes in green. I guess that's a red color is indicating 3-lane sections, and all in gold color is basically 2-lane sections. What we're trying to illustrate here is the parish was primarily in a rural type setting 35 years ago. Consistent with that, the majority of the routes in the parish are 2-lane rural routes. The only real 4-lane facilities we have are 61, I-10, and then obviously 44 now. A section of that has been 4-lane, and a section of 22. And now we've started to implement a few sections of 3-lane on 30 and 73. But outside of that, it's still primarily rural in nature. Looked at the funding over the last 10 years. A little over $70 million in state and federal funds, an average of about $7 million a year is what the parish has been receiving. Majority of that, probably 80%, if not more, has been really geared toward maintaining the existing transportation network. This exhibit right here basically shows the planned transportation projects. There are ongoing and consistently ongoing transportation planning initiatives run by the Louisiana Department of Transportation, the Capital Regional Planning Commission, and there is a transportation improvement program. There's a long-range plan for the Baton Rouge urbanized area, and there's a letting list that DOT has. There's several documents that list proposed transportation improvements with some funding, but the key is a lot of those projects are not imminent. Some of them are, a few of them are, but a lot of them, they don't necessarily have funding in place, and they may or may not happen. The bottom line of this whole discussion to date is really we have an estimated need. If you look at the Ascension Parish transportation study that was done by the Department of Transportation and the work that we've done, URS, just talking to the key stakeholders, council members, administration, of about $600 million worth of transportation improvements in this parish. The reality is, given the current financial situation and funding situation in the Louisiana Department of Transportation of state and federal funds, that this parish will receive about $10 million a year in federal and state funds. So over a 25-year period, maybe $250 million. And we have about $600 million in needs. So there is a very significant shortfall in transportation funding that needs to be addressed. And I think what the council and the administration are doing here is trying to take a proactive approach to trying to solve this potential looming problem. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and switch gears and move toward the proposed program. And I have a very simple graphic here that I wanted to use right up front to try to illustrate the overall concept of the plan. The box at the top illustrates Ascension Parish, the master transportation plan. This would be the priority or the priority projects that the parish would pursue over the long term. There's 3 potential funding sources that would support that. One would be impact fees, and I'm certainly not here to discuss the impact fee issue. I'm just noting that that is part of the overall concept that would be considered as a potential funding source. The local bond program, and we'll be discussing that in detail, could fund certain components of that overall master transportation plan. And the local bond program proceeds could also go to leverage federal and state funding. The key is, whether it's impact fees, proceeds from the bond issue, or proceeds from the bond issue leveraging state and federal funds, the only way those dollars could be spent would be on the master transportation plan projects. Relevant to the impact fees, if they were to be approved, the way they would work is they would be utilized primarily for corridor preservation and right-of-way acquisition, and they could, again, only be spent on those projects that were included in the Ascension Parish Master Transportation Plan. There is also a caveat where to acquire right-of-way, if there's any federal dollars involved, you would have to have some environmental clearance or documentation and some level of engineering, preliminary engineering, to actually determine the specific limits of the right-of-way acquisition. So those would be the things that primarily the impact fees would be used for.
Tom, not to interrupt, but just to note that previously the shortfall that Tom noted between $300 and $400 million does not include the right-of-way cost. That is why he's showing that the impact fee would be anticipated to assist. Part of it would be to assist in that endeavor, because it would be an additional shortfall of the $300
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. I appreciate it, Mike. It is something I forgot to mention. Relevant to the local bond program, as was previously noted, it would be based on a half-cent sales tax. The net bond proceeds based on our financial consultant, if it was a 10-year issue, would be about $50 to $60 million in that range. 15-year bond issue would be in the $75 to $80 million range as far as the net bond proceeds. And a 20-year program, which is the most typical that we see out in the marketplace, would yield between $90 and $100 million in net proceeds. These dollars would be used to capitalize the projects in components of the overall Ascension Parish Master Transportation Plan. And then the other category is obviously the federal and state funding. And again here, if we were to use our local funds in some cases to try to leverage these federal funds, examples would be where we would provide local match requirements on federal dollars. In many cases, there's projects that the state has out there that require federal funds that have a shortfall of a couple $1 million here and there, and those projects never move forward because they always have this shortfall. This would be a way where we could use some local funds to match it. Expediting the project development process. In many situations, again, the Department of Transportation, a project that's a priority here may not necessarily be a priority with them, or their procurement process for consultants and so on may take quite a while and slow the project down. Due to that, sometimes you can utilize your local dollars to expedite that process and get done in 2 or 3 years, what may take the state 4 to 5 years to really move forward. And then there is one other option that I think we may want to consider here, and that's where we would actually look at some anticipated federal dollars, whether it's some of the local attributable funds, STP funds that the state has, they're federal dollars that flow through the department, or some of the CMAQ funding, and see if those dollars could then be utilized where we would fund a project with local dollars and then be reimbursed at a later date on those projects, utilizing those federal funds that would come to this community. At this point, what I'd like to do is we're going to have basically 2 plans that we're going to present to you. One is going to be the Master Transportation Plan, and that would be all of the projects that would be eligible for the impact fee use or for the bond proceed use. And that's one list of projects, and that's a larger list, a more expensive list of projects. And then what we've done is we've taken the estimates from the bond proceeds, and in this case we're using $100 million, a 20-year bond issue, and we've defined specific components of the Master Transportation Plan that could be implemented with the bond proceeds. So what we'll do is present 2 lists of projects. One will be the overall master plan, and the other one would be the specific components that would be implemented with the bond proceeds. Before we get into that, I just do want to talk about our process to date. How did we identify these projects? First of all, as I noted before, we didn't want to recreate the wheel. There was a Ascension Parish transportation study that was recently completed, the Baton Rouge Urban Area Transportation Improvement Plan that is out there, the Baton Rouge Urban Area Long Range Transportation Plan, and LDOT letting schedule. We reviewed all those documents, looked at the projects and the priorities in those. Then, at that point, we obviously looked at the model results that were available relevant to congestion levels, both existing and projected. We had interviews with elected officials as well as the administration. We had the stakeholder meeting that we had talked about early. We also had discussions with some of the emergency response personnel relevant to safety and high-incident locations. And we were able to take all this information, and based on this information, we developed the master list and then the components that could be funded under the bond program. And what I'll do at this point is I'll go ahead and go through the list. I think we have we gave them handouts. So you have a handout. Let me check here. The list in blue is the Master Transportation Plan priority projects. This is the larger of the two. This is the overall program. And going through that list, first project would be LA 42, basically extending from US 61 Airline Highway to Livingston Parish line. And the ultimate vision there would be to go to a 4-lane urban section with a raised median. Next project on that list is LA 431 from the Livingston Parish line to US 61 Airline Highway. The ultimate vision there would be to go to a 4-lane urban with a raised median also. LA 30 from LA 44 to US 61 would be a 3-lane urban reconstruction project. LA 44 from I-10 to River Road, the ultimate vision there would be a 4-lane urban section with a raised median. LA 44 from LA 621, where the current 5-lane section ends, the northern terminus, to LA 42. That would be the continuation of the 5-lane section up to 42.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That is a 4-lane coming out of Gonzales to Highway 621. And so your numbers are going to be off there.
Is that correct, Ken?
I thought it was 5 lanes.
No, it's a 4-lane highway, and from 61 to Highway 621.
All right.
That is 4-lane, and so
We'll note that and verify that and modify that
yeah,
cost.
so we won't be continuing a 5-lane. If we continue anything, it'll be continuation of a 4-lane.
4-lane,
And
okay.
that will reduce that cost considerably.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate that. LA 22 extension, this would be currently LA 22 curves toward the west. There's an old section of 22 that used to exist. This would extend it from that point south down the River Road. And the vision there ultimately would be all the way from the interstate to River Road as a 4-lane rural divided roadway with that extension. Roddy Road from LA 621 to to Airline Highway. There we're looking at a 2-lane reconstruction, widening the existing travel lanes. LA 73, the section from LA 74 to LA 30, a 3-lane urban section is envisioned there. LA 621 from LA 431 to LA 73. Again, a 3-lane section with shoulders is envisioned on 621 in that location. The proposed industrial corridor, which basically extends from LA 44 near I-10 to River Road, is envisioned as a 4-lane rural divided roadway. LA 3127 extension over on the west bank from LA 70 to LA 1, 4-lane rural divided roadway is ultimate vision on that. The LA 42 extension, that would be from US 61 to I-10, a 4-lane urban section with an interchange at I-10 is envisioned. Now, it would be important to note there that that would be contingent upon finding a suitable alignment that would avoid some of the residential areas that the previous alignment had. Next project on the master list would be the I-10 frontage roads, some type of system between LA 73 and LA 22. US 61, improvements from the East Baton Rouge Parish line to LA 22, adding travel lanes. LA 930 between LA 42 and US 61, that would include reconstruction of the 2-lane roadway and widening existing lanes. Next project would be a new bridge over Bayou Lafourche near the Lowry School. Next project would be, again, on the West Bank, the intersection of LA 308, LA 1, and LA 3089, the intersection improvements. And then, based on some discussions with members of the school boards, we would be looking at improvements at, currently there's 4 locations where entrances to schools were noted as needing improvements. Let's see, let me just note that. Remember them all right offhand. That would be at Santa High School, Blessed Primary School, Oak Grove Primary School, and Central Elementary School. And then the last one on that list would be the intersection at LA 22 and US 61, adding a turn lane at that location, which was noted as a high incident location. So that.
Yeah. Tom, you don't have a price down, estimated construction cost on that second project, the additional travel lanes from Airline Highway East Baton Rouge Parish line all the way to 22.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
couple of things on that one. We do have a couple specific projects that when we get into the bond program projects, the specific projects or components that we have costed out, but the corridor is very complex, and what we are recommending that there probably be some type of corridor study to really determine the specific improvements that would be made in that corridor, and at that time we would be able to better understand the overall estimated cost of that project.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you prefer us to ask questions as we go, or would you want to continue with your PowerPoint?
Well,
and let us address the questions after.
I think maybe let me go ahead and get through it, and then I think what we could do at that point is then go back and take. I've just completed listing the Master Transportation Plan priority projects. What I'd like to do is go through the specific road bond component projects, which are more detailed, and then at that point, let's go back and let's take them one at a time. Let's talk about the master list first and see where we have some agreements, where we have some disagreements, and then let's move to the more detailed program relevant to the road bond program components. If y'all are comfortable with that. I mean, I'll handle it any way y'all want it, but.
Gentlemen, write your questions down, and then we can address them at the end, and that way he can go on with his presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, I kind of apologize for the length. I usually like to be brief on these presentations, but we have a lot of information to cover, and I thought it would be a good time to get to it. The bottom line on the Master Transportation Plan, as noted by Mr. Councilman Hillensbeck, this excludes the total cost for the US 61 airline highway projects, but $464 million, nearly $500 million worth of improvements. And keep in mind, this is a long-term vision for the parish as to where we would concentrate our initiatives in transportation. Now, with that, let's go ahead now, and we're going to refocus here, and now we're going to talk specifically about, okay, we have a program that lists certain priority corridors or projects within the region, and we know that's where we're going to concentrate our initiative. But the bond issue itself, at best, is only going to yield about $100 million in net proceeds that can be utilized to implement these projects. So we have to narrow down where would we actually spend the proceeds from this bond issue. And a couple of things right up front. If you look at this slide, basically says it'll only fund a portion of the master plan, $100 million max. Okay, we noted that. We would obviously attempt to leverage federal funds with these local dollars to a maximum extent possible. The intent would be to identify the most beneficial improvements, the ones that will give us the biggest bang for the buck up front, and that's what we've attempted to do. Those that provide good congestion relief, those that provide safety, and those that support economic development within the parish. Typical on a program like this, we would do what we call over-program it by about 25%. What I mean is if we have a bond issue with net proceeds, we estimated $100 million, we would probably want to identify about $125 million worth of projects. The reason for that would be that it is inevitable, because at this point, we're just looking conceptually at these projects. Once you get into the engineering and you see what's underground and utilities and power lines and fiber optic facilities and all types of problems may pop up and occur. Some of these projects may be significantly delayed, or some of them we may not be able to ultimately complete. Due to that, we want to have alternative projects that we can move forward. The second thing is, if this program goes according to how it goes in many of the growing communities, the net bond proceeds will be X dollars. But on an annual basis, you may see additional revenue generated over what you really need just to meet the minimum debt service on the plan. So there may be additional monies available to fund other projects. And obviously, you'd want that money to only be eligible to the projects on the list itself. And I would anticipate, if the growth continues like we've noted earlier within the parish, you would probably have some additional funds over and above that $100 million from the net proceeds. And again, you could use that to fund some of these other projects. So that's why we typically would overprogram about 25%. Let's go to the next slide here. When we look at the, and I'll call it the road bond program components, they all are directly related to the master transportation plan. I think that's important. Many of them are intersection type improvements or turn lane type improvements. And the reason for that is, on a lot of these roadways, the first point of congestion is typically at your intersections. That's where you're going to have your biggest problems. So we're going to get the most bang for the buck by making intersection improvements early on. What we can do is figure out the ultimate configuration of the roadway. If it's going to be a 4-lane, we'll design the intersection to that ultimate configuration and then make the improvements. In some cases, we have gone and we've programmed some capacity improvements where we're actually adding either a 3rd lane, or in other cases, we're adding an additional travel lane in each direction. And in some cases where we're looking more toward the safety side of the equation, I think 930 is a good example where school board noted that 2 buses really can't even pass one another. They have a couple instances where they've, I think the rear view mirrors, or the side mirrors have actually hit one another. We're there looking to actually just widen existing travel lanes, in some cases from a 9 or 10-foot type configuration to full 12-foot travel lanes with shoulders. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll go through this list. Now, this list is a little bit more extensive and complicated, but nonetheless, I think it's worth going through the list in detail. And then once I complete that, I'll be finished, and then we can go ahead and start the discussion. The first series of projects are relevant to LA 42. The first project programmed under the bond program would be US 61, and take it, there's no priority order here established. I'm just going through the list of projects. LA 42 from US 61 to LA 930. We'd implement a 4-lane urban section with a raised median. The next project would be LA 42, the intersection at 933. Next would be again LA 42, the intersection at Joseph Arroyo Road. Next one again would be LA 42, the intersection at 929. Just to note, there is about $8 million currently available for improvements in that corridor, and obviously the balance would be funded with the local bond proceeds. Next project would be on sections of LA 431, primarily intersection improvements and a few reconstruction projects. One would be the intersection at Gold Place, which would be a 934 on the south side. Then intersection with LA 934, which is at that place, I believe Black Bayou Road. Then the intersection at LA 621. And then there's 2 sections in which we would actually reconstruct the road to meet current standards to allow for more efficient travel. And that would be between LA 429 and Airline Highway. And then the other section on the northern end between LA 431 north and south to eliminate those 90-degree curves. The next project would be on LA 30 between LA 44 and US 61. That would be to complete a 3-lane section or implement a 3-lane section in that location, and that would allow to have 3 lanes all the way from the interstate to 44. Well, from the interstate all the way to 61, I'm sorry. Next project would be on LA 44 again. It would be an intersection improvement at LA 933. Next project again would be on LA 44, intersection at Burtville Road. Next project would be on LA 621 from LA 73 to Tiggy DePlessis Road, widened to 3-lane urban section. And the next project would then be again on LA 621 from Tiggy DePlessis Road to US 61 Airline Highway, again widened to a 3-lane urban section. And then the other project also would be on LA 621, the intersection at Airline Highway. There is about $2.4 million in federal funds that's currently available for improvements on LA 621 that we would also hope to utilize. The next project has been referred to as the Industrial Corridor Project. It would extend from LA 44 near I-10 down to River Road. What we're proposing here is a new 2-lane rural highway. If you remember in the master transportation plan, the concept was to have a 4-lane, but initially we would just build the 2-lane facility. Next project on the list is the LA 3127 extension. At this point, what we're primarily proposing is an alignment study and probably look at the NEPA or the environmental side of the equation. Not necessarily, this does not include the construction of that project. It just moves it to the next level. LA 70 is the next project. That would be the realignment near the intersection of LA 22 and LA 70. There is actually a design that exists out there to extend directly from the interstate into 70, where it would be a continuous flow, and this would be to implement that, just that leg of it right there to eliminate that 90-degree turn. There is a project right now, I think many of you are aware of, that's being implemented there, but that is just envisioned as an interim or stopgap type measure. This would be the ultimate improvement at that location. The LA 42 extension, this again is only the environmental evaluation and the realignment evaluation. Obviously there was some significant problems with community opposition on that project, and this would be to see if we could find a suitable alignment that would be acceptable to the community. The I-10 frontage roads, this project I do believe is a good project and has a tremendous potential, especially from an economic development side. However, if you remember looking at the results of the travel demand model, the interstate system is going to have significant problems. Unfortunately, it looks like in the future, and will be very similar to what I-12 looks like out near O'Neill Lane and those sections of roadway 15, 20 years out. It's a very complex problem. There has been discussion of interchanges, obviously at 42, at 74, service roads. What we're basically saying is it's too complex of a problem to just be able to say, let's make this improvement at this location. What really needs to be done is a corridor study needs to be implemented there to determine exactly where these interchanges would be most effective, and to determine the exact limits of the frontage roads, and to determine whether we're looking at a two-way frontage road system, a one-way frontage road system. So what we're proposing is this would be one method as to how we could actually go in and evaluate long-term how this community would like to see the interstate system and associated right-of-way and frontage roads actually operate within this community. Obviously, it's the lifeline from a transportation perspective, very important corridor. Next project on the list is the LA 74 extension. This is a actually quite small extension in length. It extends from where it terminates at Airline Highway over to LA 44, but would be a substantial improvement as far as transportation flow and efficiency. Next project would be reconstruction of Roddy Road between LA 621 and Airline Highway. That's a continuation of some of the efforts that are ongoing by the parish. Next project would be US 61 Airline Highway from the East Baton Rouge Parish line to LA 22. Again, right after this, there's two projects that we're discussing directly, but this may be one, again, where the complexity of the corridor and to determine ultimately what we need to do, we probably need to spend a little time planning the specific improvements that really do need to be implemented. However, there are two projects on US 61 we think that we may be able to implement at relatively low cost and have some significant beneficial impact. One would be US 61 Airline Highway between LA 73 and LA 42, and that would be continuing the addition of a travel lane in each direction, and then continuing further to the south between LA 621 and LA 73. Well, actually, it's just opposite that, but both of those sections, we would add a travel lane in each direction, and that would allow more capacity on that section of Airline Highway. Next project on the list is LA 930 between LA 42 and US 61. This would be the reconstruction of the existing travel lanes to widen those travel lanes and add shoulders, primarily a safety improvement. This next project is really a repeat of one I've already mentioned, LA 3127 extension. We basically broke it up into two phases where you would look at the alignment and then probably perform the environmental. Next project is a Lowry School Bridge, which would be a new crossing of the of Bayou Lafourche over on the West Bank, improving access to the school location. There's a pretty good gap between bridges along that section of Bayou Lafourche, and that would help to bridge that gap, obviously. Next project would be the intersection. There's a typo here, but this would be the intersection of LA 3089 with both LA 308 and LA 1 intersection improvements. The next project would be the turn lanes at the four schools that were noted, basically improving ingress and egress to those school sites. Next project would be LA 22. This would be at the intersection of US 61 and Airline Highway, actually making that intersection improvement. Next project would be on LA 73 between I-10 and US 61. There's a current project that the state's trying to implement there. We believe there may be a funding shortfall that we can cover of, I think it's only about $1 million to help expedite that project. And I think that concludes it. Let me make sure. Yep, it surely does. Okay, let me just take 1 minute to go back and try to summarize things very briefly, because I know this is a lot of information for y'all to to grasp all at one time. But I think this little simple organizational chart is very important to understand. If we don't understand that, we don't understand the basis of the overall concept here. There's going to be a master transportation program of priority projects. There's going to be 3 potential funding sources. One would be impact fees, one would be the local bond program, and we would use some of those local funds to leverage federal funds. We will not be able to, with the bond proceeds, fund the entire transportation plan. So what we have is the second list that I read of the specific components that we believe would be the most beneficial components to fund with the local bond proceeds based on a 20-year bond sale with a net proceed of approximately $100 million. We would overprogram that about 25%, and that total cost on that program that I just read off was about $125 million in local funds. There was obviously some federal funds involved in that. Kent, I don't remember, what was the total federal dollars we had in that program? About 15 million?
16, 17,
Okay.
That's important.
Okay, so that total program was about $125 million in local dollars, about $140 total. most of those federal dollars are dollars that are already available or committed. We will obviously try to attract additional federal dollars in the future, and that would be one advantage of having this local program in place. When you have local dollars available, if there are any federal dollars that do come available, we'll be ready to go to construction, and that will enhance our capability to get those funds. And again, the ultimate reasoning and logic behind this whole program is to enhance the quality of life and promote the sustainable development within the parish of Ascension. And with that, I'll say let's go ahead and open it up for discussion. I do apologize for the length of it, but I didn't know any other way to try to get through it while we had the opportunity to do it. And what I'll say is, Ken, I think Ken will be available to answer questions. I'll try to answer questions as best I can. And let's just open it up for discussion, really, in what I would call just a workshop format to see what we can hash out.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes, let's start off with the impact fees. If for some reason these impact fees don't pass, it's going to throw a whole different ball game at this whole program.
Well, what it'll do, it'll reduce the amount of projects that we can move forward with the bond program, because the numbers and the dollars that we have in there for the bond program components are basically the construction costs of those projects, the implementation. It's not, it doesn't include right-of-way acquisition on those projects. So I don't know what that total cost on right-of-way acquisition would be on those projects. It may be 30% of the total cost. It may be a little less. It may be more. I don't know that answer, but it would obviously reduce your buying capacity as far as amount of transport. You could still have the same list of projects and the same priorities. We just won't be able to get as many done.
On the master transportation plan, we had like $464 million figured. With the half-cent sales tax 20-year bond, we're looking at $100 million with no guarantees on the state or federal reimbursement or matching, right? There's no guarantees.
There will be no guarantees. You will not get a letter from the
guess-
department guaranteeing you'll be reimbursed.
Right.
No, sir.
So that could limit how many projects we do also on the amount of federal funding we're going to receive.
Certainly, it would limit it. Yeah, I mean, the more federal funding we get, the more projects we can move. If we don't, at this point, I think
Realistically, I guess I'm saying is, we see the big picture here, but this big picture is going to be shrunk quite a bit with reality amount of money that we're going to receive from.
Yes, sir, it will. But I think one thing that's very important, and that's why the impact fees come into play. That vision, that $500 million, that's very ambitious, and we won't have enough bond proceeds or local dollars to implement that, and we probably won't attract enough federal dollars over the next 20 years to implement that whole program. But if you could start to acquire the right-of-way for those projects, the ultimate right-of-way for those projects at this point, that'll save you pay tremendous dividends down the road in corridor preservation, because the cost of that right-of-way on some of these routes that are still primarily rural in nature, the cost will go up exponentially over the next 20 years, and you'll get so much development along some of these corridors, the ability to acquire the right-of-way becomes almost impossible. And that's why you see a lot of communities trying to put a real emphasis on what we call corridor preservation, because the ability to purchase it now would pay tremendous dividends in the future. It's not so much the construction cost on a lot of these projects as it is the actual right-of-way acquisition. And the prime example is another fast-growing parish here in this state is St. Tammany Parish. And we just went through a project on US 190 in Mandeville, a small community over there, relatively small community, but fast-growing in the commercial property. Was going for about $15 a foot, I believe, in that acquisition. And the right-of-way acquisition costs were as much, I think, and actually they were more than the construction cost of the project. Waited a little too long. They started planning that project 20 years ago. There was no corridor preservation, and that's the types of things that happen. So the benefit of having the long-range plan is to say, here's ultimately what we want to do. So if we ever do get a corridor preservation plan in place, we can start to acquire that right-of-way, and that makes it much, much easier in the long run to ultimately be able to implement the whole program.
and I see your point there, but the parish did this several years ago with the widening of the road project, parish roads, not state roads, and went out and started buying right-of-ways, buying structures. They bought 2 houses on Cannon Road that recently was sold for hardly nothing. They bought all these right-of-ways up front, but come to find out down the road, they see that the funding is not there to improve these roads. So the residents may never, or should I say, quite a while, see any improvements as far as infrastructure, because we're going to spend most of the money buying right-of-ways. And we're not going to have the funding left to actually build the roads.
Well, I think
That's what happened with the parish roads.
And I understand, and that I can see where that could happen. And I think it's a matter of just how you coordinate the program. You want to identify the priority areas where you want to make improvements and try to buy the right of way in those areas where. And let's take an example for this program right here, based on the road bond components. There's a lot of those projects that need right of way acquisition, and they would need them right away. And I think that would be we would do all we could, for instance, if the impact fees we implemented. We would take every dime of those impact fees here for the next probably 10 years or 5 years, or just to buy the right of way for those projects. I mean, it's,
One more,
it would be how you design the
One
program.
more comment. I'm looking at the list, and naturally, probably almost all, but maybe 1 or 2 of these roads are state highways out of a total of about 15, 20 highways.
Yes, sir.
And it's going to take an impact fee and a half-cent sales tax to fund this, which right now we have a half-cent sales tax to provide maintenance for our parish roads. So I'm just concerned about our parish roads right now as far as we're going to be able to keep them up. We're going to have to look for more money because we're taking in roads every year from subdivision roads and whatever. And these roads are going to be needing repairs shortly. And I'm concerned about the $2.5 million a year that we have just to maintain our parish roads. And I see, like I said, this list is probably all but maybe 1 or 2 that I've seen are parish roads. The rest are state highways. So I had a little concern with that also.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I did find it a little bit unique that a lot of, in our interviews with stakeholders during the course of the process, a lot of the priorities were on state routes. But then again, the majority of the problems and the congestion are on state routes. So that's why it kept coming up that way. I think the benefit of it really addresses the true transportation deficiencies in the parish, and it probably provides the most bang for the buck. The downside is, I understand what you're saying, that a lot of the local dollars are going to be spent on state roads. So that's an issue that y'all ultimately going to have to make a decision on.
Okay.
Anybody else? Councilman Helms back.
Sure, I got 4 or 5 questions here. Mr. Hunter, was our legislative delegation consulted? Have you had a chance yet to present any of this to them? Because I know Representative Lambert, he has been dead set on trying to 5-lane 42. So have y'all had a chance to consult with Senator Amadei, Mr. Kazare, who is the
Yes.
chairman of the Transportation Committee?
Yes, we
Merce
did. We
Meyer
had
and Lambert?
we had a meeting with them at the state capitol just recently, and we sat down with them and we talked to them about all of their. Well, we wanted to hear from them what their priorities were, and we had a good discussion. Ms. Fontenot was there, and it was interesting. I thought a lot of the information or projects that they recommended or thought should be considered were consistent with the projects in this plan, and I think for the most part we've covered the majority of their concerns that were brought up at that meeting.
Okay. As far as the bond issue being based on the half-cent sales tax, how conservative are your numbers? Are these numbers based on the current collections? And who came up with the numbers? Is it based on the future commercial growth that this parish is going to see we excuse me, we've had this this boom, and the boom continues in residential growth. And historically, your commercial growth follows that residential growth, and then with the commercial growth, your sales tax dollars, your collections are going to rise, and they're going to rise rapidly. So, question is, who came up with the numbers?
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I did fail to mention that. There is a financial advisor that we're utilizing their services, and they did do an estimate of what the net bond proceeds would be. They've done many of these programs in the past. I think these numbers are going to, you'll find that the net proceeds will be pretty consistent with what the dollars we're showing here, within that range. Well, I guess the bottom line is they've done several of these types of projects, and I do believe that these numbers will be good numbers. The bottom line is, though, they have to work with the bond rating agencies and other people that get these things improved. So they have to take a conservative approach. I'm not exactly sure of the process they use, but my basic understanding is they have to look at what revenue generation the parish has had, like over the previous 3 years or 5 years, and they average that. And you can only take about 80% of that, and that's the maximum you can assume for your debt service repayment.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we're going to have to do.
Well,
The advisor did note to us that obviously our sales tax revenue is growing, and that there will likely be substantial additional dollars, especially in future years, well over and above what's needed to repay that debt service. And that's why I also mentioned let's over-program about 25%, because you'll probably have significant additional dollars down the road.
Okay. The next question I have is, you're showing on your bond program component list, you call for Highway 42 being four-laned with an urban raised median.
Yes, sir.
From US 61 to Highway 930, and
Yep.
ending the improvement at Highway 930 intersection, and at a cost of $15 million. Well, I'll be honest with you. I think that four laning is great, and I think it's terrific that Representative Lambert wants to 5-lane it, but I question that we'll ever be able to do that. But I think 4-lane is within reach. But I don't think we need to 4-lane with a raised median. I think we could 4-lane and possibly try to 4-lane at least from Jefferson Highway. In fact, it's already 4-lane from 61 to about 400 feet east of Jefferson Highway. I mean, that's a 4-lane section right there, and I would think that we would pare that down instead of trying to do 4-lane with a raised median. Just do 4-lane and take it all the way to Highway 44 because of the car count, the traffic count. The traffic on that section of roadway in 2001 was a daily count of 20,000 vehicles. And then since 2001, we've had all this growth plus the post-Katrina growth. So I would like for us to go back and maybe rethink that section of road and have 4-lane with no median, raised median, and take it all the way to at least Highway 44.
The department's preferred typical section for that type of facility is a 4-lane with a raised median. The department is trying to get away from the 5-lane urban sections that we have built in the past because of access management and safety reasons. A 4-lane undivided highway is very inefficient because you have so much turning from those inside lanes that you really have only 2 through lanes.
You almost just soon build a 3-lane.
Yeah. So and you're going to have to get a permit from the department to do anything on 42. And our best guess is that a 4-lane divided with a raised median is what the department is going to ask that the Ascension Parish build.
Well, I understand that's going to be nicer and safer, but it's also, I think it's almost unreasonable when you look at the cost. it's almost like pie in the sky.
Okay. Well, I think
And
maybe
we could
we'll-
do so much more laneage if we,
Well, how about if we do this? Let's look at the cost without the raised median, and let's do a comparison. And if there really is a substantial cost, well, maybe it'd be something maybe worth considering. Let's just.
okay. The next item is where you're showing on your chart, continuation of 44, Highway 44 from 621 to Merritt Road.
Wait, I'm sorry. Repeat that. I'm sorry.
To Merritt Evans Road, it's on the first page, down toward the bottom.
621 Merritt
Yeah.
Ave. Okay.
That's the one I brought up earlier. That is a 4-lane section now. It's not divided. And if we're going to continue with that 4-lane, I think we should carry 44, not just to Merritt Evans, but carry it all the way to Highway 42.
Is that a divide? Do they have a median in that section? or is it
There's no
undivided?
median in that road from 621 south to
and
Gonzales.
I assume that's what you're considering up
Yeah.
on 42.
Yeah, just
You want
continue
us
with
to
what
consider
we've
that.
got, 4-lane.
Okay.
And not make that 5-lane, and so instead of spending $15 million and going just to Merritt Evans Road, we could maybe spend the $15 million, go 4-lane, and get it all the way to Highway 42.
Certainly getting to 44 would be, the optimal, it was just the cost.
Yeah, getting all the way to 42. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, of course, the next item, I am disappointed that Highway 73 from Airline Highway is not seeing any improvements. A lot of that Highway 73 in the Oak Grove area is commercial now. And
What section is that? I'm sorry.
Highway 73 from Airline Highway to the East Baton Rouge Parish line, Bayou Manchac Bridge.
Yeah.
That is another corridor approach to East Baton Rouge, and a lot of people will avoid Airline Highway and the interstate and use that approach into Baton Rouge. The last thing, I'm a little confused on the last screen that's showing. Where's the state funding in all this? Where's state dollars? Is there no state dollars? I don't understand that, and I really,
I just make
with the growth that we are facing and the taxpayers we have in Ascension Parish, I understand why we don't have some state dollars being put up.
Well, one thing, the federal program is relatively large, and the fact of the matter is the majority of the available state dollars really need to go just to match the federal program. In fact, there's concern with the new federal legislation that was recently passed. If we get the increases in federal funding that they're anticipating, will they even have enough state dollars to match the federal program? So the majority of the projects that you see coming out of Louisiana Department of Transportation have federal dollars, and they have matching state dollars. So most of them are federally funded projects, and that's why you don't see much reference. Now, you can elaborate on that. You may, as a man that knows more than I do relevant to that issue.
Excuse me. The state is spending all the money from the 16-cent gasoline tax that's collected on matching the federal money. The money has been divided up amongst capacity projects and rehabilitation projects and other types of projects. And there was about $80 million a year put into capacity work. The state is in the process of stopping all new capacity projects after the year 2010. They're putting all their money into what they call their rehabilitation program and to the things like improvements on the interstate. But there are going to be very, very few projects of, say, widening from a 2-lanes to a 4-lane or 5-lane highways coming out of the state of Louisiana unless there is a new source of money coming out.
So where we have right now, according to your printout, we've got 11.72 federal dollars out there available for projects. Is there state matching dollars in the amount of 11.72 to help move these projects forward?
For those projects that show available federal funds, and I believe the two major ones are on 73 and on 42.
Right.
There are funds available at whenever that comes, but it may be several years down the line.
So it's not immediately available?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I got one question on the same topic.
Ken,
Go ahead,
you want
go
to
ahead,
yield
go
to
ahead.
Todd?
Go ahead.
Yeah, on this, Mr. Davis, are you up to date with the 16 cents on the gasoline tax? Could you explain maybe how that tax is sent back to the parish where it was purchased? Or is it? I know it goes in one pot. Then
It's not
distributed.
designated to any one particular parish. It goes on a statewide basis.
So it's up to our legislature to go out and get the funding and bring it back to our parishes.
Up to but the road show that is done every year is where they collect information about what projects the legislators and the public want in the program. They take that into consideration when they put up a program. And nothing says that any one parish is going to get the amount of money that they got taxed.
Thanks for the information.
Councilman Chexnada.
Thank you, Ms. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I was a little baffled. Did you consult with Charles Landry about before you did this? Because we just had a meeting with him, and we had hired them for our impact fees, and he stated emphatically that we cannot just buy right-of-way with impact fees. I mean, that was cut and dry. You cannot do that. Now, we're being told that by a person that we hired that's supposed to be an expert, and then in our plan here, we're being told that we go out and buy right-of-way.
I think what I noted, one of the primary purposes would be for corridor preservation, but obviously I am aware of the fact that, that was noted, that you couldn't use it exclusively for right-of-way.
All right.
I think
So
it may be, we will have to clarify. My understanding was we could not just buy right-of-way, but consider that engineering, environmental clearances, along with right-of-way preservation, some other local projects may also come out of that. We'll have to clarify that with that. We are aware of that. My understanding was not just right-of-way, but we need to clarify that.
Yes, because he said it, you could acquire right-of-way only if it was because of the impact a development made on an area, and you needed to improve that area. That was the whole idea of the impact fee, because this will change from year to year. If you have an area with high development, whether it be commercial or residential, then you will need to change your priorities and maybe do turning lanes. That's the problem we have now, is we're getting developments, and after 10 small subdivisions, they need a turning lane. And we have no money set aside, and we have no way to collect money from these developers or individual people. And so if we give that up to just corridor preservation, then we're in the same problem we had before, and that as we get these small additions of developments, and we get to the point where a road is intersection or a road is overloaded, we have no funding method to improve that.
To make those intersection improvements into those new developments.
And that's the whole idea behind impact fees.
And that's an excellent point. I think that's something we seriously need to look into.
That was one of the points I wanted to make too, because in reading the ordinance, it says that the impact fee is to benefit the development that pays it.
Right.
And so it's a very complex issue from the way I look at it, in that if you're collecting it even in a district, you've got different ends of the district even. And so what you collect in one district can only be used in that district, and should only be used, like if it's collected in the northern end, should only be used in the northern end of the district. So it becomes very, very complex from the way I understand it, and which is one of the reasons why I'm not sold on the impact fee.
And, I just want to see us be on the same page. I mean, here we getting consultants to come back with us and give us recommendations on this, and since the impact fee is part of this plan, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page, because this is the second time we've had private meetings with people we've hired and then come back and been told different things. So whatever we do, go back and let's clear that up.
Right. I think a case can be made that, the impact in certain areas, perhaps the impact fee would have to go for certain roadways to connect it to a certain development. A lot of that still needs to be cleared up. And obviously, I agree that's an excellent point, and that's something that needs to be addressed, and we do need to get with Mr. Charles Landry and clarify that, and possibly even get the parish attorney involved to go back and forth a little bit to make sure that everybody's crystal clear on how exactly the dollars and what district, et cetera, they need to be paid for.
Well, I mean, my understanding in the meetings and everything, I mean, that went a long way into securing approval by the councilman, because what we're having in this parish is, and this is how we got started on the transportation plan and the impact fees,
Right.
is that we had developers and housing starts that have come in here from out of the parish, basically, and we've had a boom, and the people that have been living here all our lives have had to pay for improvements. And the whole study, the whole point in hiring somebody to come in here and paying them money to tell us how we should best fund the method to having people that make the impact, people that come with the development, pay for it.
Right.
And so if we're not going to stick to that, then there's no reason to have any impact fees, because that's why they were, I mean, we got to go back to last year and why we started going to impact fees. And that was the reason why, instead of having a moratorium, because they had this room, not this room, the old room, was filled up with people that said, we got enough. We can't get out of our driveways, we can't do this. We had a big development over here, we had a bunch of small developments, and we need a method to, and because we didn't have but $2.8 million a year to do improvements, and the parish couldn't do it. And we didn't think it was right for the local people that have been living here all their lives to pay for what people that have moved in caused an impact. And so we hired them, they came up with that plan, and I would just like to see that implemented, what we talked about.
We agree, Ken, and I think the issue is certainly the projects that we looked at. We've gotten input from everybody, the stakeholders, committee, elected officials, emergency preparedness, et cetera, are the very roads, biggest bang for the buck to make sure that we get rid of the congestion so that folks can get out of their driveway. I think we have to, at some point, we're trying to come up with a master list where everybody can say, okay, this is our plan, this is what we want to move forward. And it takes this kind of meeting and this kind of workshop and this kind of dialogue back and forth to get to that point to move it forward. And then I think we need to connect all those dots between the impact fee, sales tax, and exactly how that works before you go to the public. But it takes at least this point to kind of at least start painting the picture and getting something on the canvas, and then to connect those dots. Certainly there may be some instances where maybe you can't use the impact fee for one area versus a roadway that may improve the other. But there are some roadways that may extend corridors from east to west and north to south that would certainly relieve the congestion and would certainly qualify for the impact fee. But those
Right.
dots have to be connected. Excellent point, and that's the next step we need to
Okay.
address.
Our Public Work Director, Kent, would like to say something, if you'll give him the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yes.
And I've said it before, and I disagree somewhat in the conception of impact fees, the way it's been presented. The fact of the matter, the way I see it, is that an impact fee is not an impact. What does a particular subdivision impact our traffic? It is within a district, whatever district might be configured. Once you get, say, 75% or 80% built in that district, in other words, right now you might be 40%. Thing is, once you get collectively 80% built out, in other words, the majority of that district is built out, what kind of traffic problems you're going to have collectively, and then spend the impact fees to benefit that district from all of these subdivisions coming in. The problem we have now is that you get one subdivision in a local area and it's not really impacting too much. The second one comes in, impacts it a little bit more, but not enough to have to do something. Once you get 4 or 5 or 6, well, then all of a sudden you're over the line, and then something has to be done. What we're trying to look at is once you get 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, because all these projects is going to take 10 or 15 years. And it's very simple. What kind of transportation system we need in the parish when we get 15 and 20 years down the road, that we better have in place, or we could be in serious trouble because of all the people moving into the parish. And that's why we're looking at major transportation systems on major highways, because it's obvious that unless you have some four-lane major corridors going through the parish, 15 years from now, when we have 150,000 people in the parish, we're going to have major problems at those points. And impact fees should be spent to look at 10 and 15 years from now, and not 1 year and 2 years and 3 years ahead. Because that's our job now, is to look and see what kind of problem Baton Rouge is having, because they did not implement this type of work 20 years ago. And again, to go with corridor preservation, looking to the future, and seeing what has to be done. And again, that's the administration's point. And we're trying to make it fit into what's being presented by some of these consultants that we hired on impact fees and everything else. We're trying to fit that into what we see as needed, and not so much what was done in other places.
Right, and I think along the lines of what Mr. Roos said is that those are the dots that need to be connected. Certainly, you could make a case that one subdivision or two or so forth and so on would impact down the road, and those are the I's we have to dot and the T's we have to cross. But excellent point.
But we're going to have myriad in the future.
Right.
Intersections that need to be improved on a small amount. That might be $100,000 improvements, $200,000 improvements that are never listed on here, and we will never do, because we don't have the monies to do them. And this is what, regardless of what anybody else says, this is what we were tasked to do from the very beginning. That was the intent from the very beginning, when we put together a group and we started studying, and we tasked Charles Landry and them. Now, it's been changed as a way to try to figure out an overall master plan. I want to tell you, the state better get involved in it, because the people are not going to stand up and allow the state to continue to forget about Ascension Parish, regardless of what we want to say. We need to take care of our immediate needs. We need to assist the state wherever, I agree with you 100%, we need to assist the state wherever possible in buying corridors. And if the parish of Ascension buys a corridor, then the state better come back and they need to try to fund it or explain to us why they're not, if we're going to put up this money. I agree with you 100% on that.
Excellent point.
But for us to take all our monies on impact fees, that's to get immediate relief of the local people now. Not 10 years from now, not 15 years from now, but now. And that's what the intent was. We have nothing in place in this parish to relieve traffic congestion from people that are coming in now. And a lot of that is intersection improvements and things of that sort. It may be a turning lane. An example in the area where we live at now, on Highway 44 in Loosemore, Highway 22, all of those areas are going to have a tremendous amount of increase. And those are the type of things that we have no idea next year or the year after what that's going to look like, because that's going to be determined by people, by what's reasonable, what people want to buy. People move in. It's just like 5 or 10 years ago, you could not foresee what would happen in the Galvez area and anything like that. And if they would have had some impact fees, they could have had some turning lanes at different roads, some light improvements, and some things that these subdivisions have impacted them.
Right. So Ken, just to kind of confirm what you're saying, as far as developing a plan, we all agree we're hopefully headed in the right direction. But you believe that some of that impact fee has to be preserved for these things that
I'm saying that the impact fee was made, designed, and everything for immediate needs for impact, and it should have been spent within 10 years, or it goes back into that. Mm-hmm. It is something that the reason we're trying to collect it at a rapid pace as quickly as possible is so that we can implement the intersection needs before the actual subdivisions have been built out.
Okay, so not to be used for master plan at all then?
We can't afford that. I think it's in an area that you're going to have some immediate construction, and it's going to benefit that area because of the residences or the commercial aspects that have come in. If that's going to improve that area, and you utilize impact fees and then bond money to improve that, and it's a direct result of the people moving in or the businesses moving in, that's fine. That's what it's for. But that, don't change midstream. We started a year and a half ago to try to solve that problem. And we all worked through a year and a half to solve that problem. Now, so don't take that problem off the table and use it for something else now after we've spent a considerable amount of money doing that. There's a small area that you can work with that, but it has to be that.
Let me, I just want to make sure I clearly understand, and I think I do, but let me give an example, because I've done quite a few traffic impact assessments in other communities. There's different ways. They often require a traffic impact assessment for a new development, and in some cases the developers have to actually pay the cost of making those improvements. Is handled different ways in different locations. But an example would be, I think, the section of 44 south of I-10 near Pelican Point and all. There's several intersections. When a new subdivision goes in, if it's of substantial size, let's say it's 500 residential lots, single-family lots, and maybe commercial up front, there's going to be an impact on 44, obviously. There's usually about 10 trips per household, so you're looking at maybe 5,000 additional trips in the course of a day that's going to be generated. And the most immediate thing that we look at when we do it is what's the impact of getting in and out of the subdivision, left turn lanes, right turn lanes, and things along those lines. But oftentimes, bigger developments, we have to look, well, what happens to the intersection up at I-10 and 44? How does it impact that? Normally, what the developer usually winds up doing is just making improvements right near the entrance, right at the state roadway where it impacts. But then focusing here back on what Mr. Rue was discussing, I can understand also how you can use those funds to improve that specific intersection or location where the development is having an impact. But let's say there's 6 subdivisions planned at various locations along 44. And now you need probably several intersection improvements. But there gets a point where the capacity of 44 now has to go from 2 lane to 4 lane, and now we have to actually acquire right-of-way to widen the roadway. And there the impact fees could be used for right-of-way acquisition.
And what you do, and that's going to happen, because right now the state is overlaying 44. They're widening it by a foot.
Yeah.
And the reason they widen it by a foot is that's because where the ruts are from the trucks that are going off the road right now. So I guess they figure they won't have to fill in the ruts. But they're going to widen 44, right? I mean, they're going to widen it 1 foot. They're not going to put any shoulders, most dangerous road in the parish.
Absolutely.
And they got gas trucks on it every day. And we've been hearing for 10 years they were going to go 4 lane, 3 lane, and we're tired of it. Now, if the state comes up and it looks like we're going to have about 2,500 houses in the next year or so in that area. And if we do impact fees, which I'm all for impact fees for that use, and we come up with enough money to tell the state, look, if you agree with us and you put that on your heavy priority, we're going to put shoulders on 44 for safety, and we'll put up X amount of money for right-of-way acquisition to it, then that's fine. That's good for the impact fee because they have impacted that. That's fine. But for us to go out immediately and dedicate something and just buy right-of-way for it, I can't agree with that. I mean, there has to be something that we're buying right-of-way for a construction project, is that we've got to deal with the state, and that's what we're going to do, because that's an impact fee.
But, excuse me, if I may, that's exactly what we're talking about, Councilman. But
Highway 44 is not on this plan.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Not widen Highway 44.
Well, no, because it's already on a state plan.
But all they're doing...
But what I'm saying is, what we're saying is, you're saying exactly what we're saying. We're saying that eventually, you're thinking about 2,500 homes coming in that area. Now we're looking at, really we need the multi-lane 44. Not an intersection and everything. After that point, a few intersections is not going to be helpful. So now let's look and anticipate those 2,500 houses and say, okay, let's bond this money and go ahead and 4-lane 44 right now, beginning with right-of-way acquisition. Because I'm telling you right now, if we would acquire right-of-way along 44, DOTD would probably be multi-laning 44. One of the main reasons they're not doing it is because there's no right-of-way and it costs too much to get the right-of-way.
It's
So
not on the bond program.
You're saying the same thing we're saying.
Yeah, and I can tell you one of the reasons why is because they're about to spend, I guess, $8 million on it right now.
Right.
To improve it, and we thought this initial bond program would be over the next 5 to 8 years probably, and it would be more logical to say, let's get some useful life out of the reconstruction improvement instead of going and tear it up a year after the DOTD just went in and did the reconstruction improvements. I think we were just looking at the logic of, is that something we want to do? And that's not to say we don't, but in our view, we said, let's work with the reconstruction, let it go for 5 to 10 years, and then at that point, we come back and we widen it, or based on the traffic and the development that occurs there, when it's mandated that we need that additional capacity, we go in and get it done.
Well, I mean, and I understand, and if the amount of money is coming into for impact fees in that area is substantial enough, that is fantastic. If the state agrees that we will do that. But like you said, 5 to 8 years, we wasn't even planning on doing anything there. And so that means 5 to 8 years, and what we're going to do with the impact fees. And because there's no other, I just want to make sure in the master transportation plan, in the bond program, we don't have any small things that need to be done. All right? And so I want to stay with the plan. I'm a plan person. I want to stay with the plan and everything. And that's why I think we have to have something that takes care of the master transportation plan, something that's going to take care of the changes that we have and the immediate needs that we're going to have, which I thought impact fees were, and then something that's going to have to take care. And again, we can use our monies to leverage for federal monies, and we need to get the state more involved. And I think as we get more and more pressure, we'll get that. But if we have a need, and I agree with Mr. Rubin, he and I talked about it a lot, specifically Highway 44. If we had impact fees now, we could have gotten another intersection improved. And so, but that's a direct thing. You're gonna put up impact fees to get something immediate. That's fine. But not to put up impact fees for something 10 years down the road.
President Hughes.
Madam Chairman,
something?
I've been sitting quietly listening, which is kind of unusual for me, I guess, at times, but I'm trying to do that. First of all, I want to go back. I think it was Todd that mentioned 2 houses, and they were bought in 2003, and they're on Shealy and Cannon. And what happened, I understand, Councilman Lambert, talking to the previous leadership, is that some members of the parish council, once they bought these homes, got pressure from residences along Cannon Road and said, I don't want my road widened in front of my house, so they took it off the road widening program. So we actually bought those homes back the other day. We bought twice now. They were paid a lot of money for in 2003, right before we took office. The people who bought them at auction never moved them because I think the cost was more than what they realized. And so we bought them back the other day for very little money, those 2 houses, and we are using them now for, the judges are using one for storage, but if you want to go look at them, I'll be happy to show them to you because it's a good example of our tax money being wasted. But we are trying to make some something good out of, trying to make some lemonade now out of some lemons, and they are being used by the judicial branch of government, and also we're going to probably use one for our maintenance people to work out of as far as facility management. So that's really what I understand happened there, talking to the previous president and some members of the previous council on that and talking to some neighbors. Now, but that's really different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about these major corridors here. We all know that we have to do something. We may disagree on how we do that something. But these state arteries, and unlike a lot of states where the county roads are predominant in Louisiana because of the populous form of government, many of our roads are state roads. I mean, there's no reason from a transportation system for Highway 930 by Prairieville Middle School, which we probably ought to be a state road. I mean, that's not even that's not even a farm to market county road or parish road when you think about it, but there was some political deal in the past it was. I think that road 16 foot when me and Doug and Eddie Lamb went out and actually measured it with a tape. But it's because of those kind of issues. 929 is partly parish, partly state. You know, Worthy Road is partly state, partly city, partly parish. And so the monies that we get in the next few years are going to be absorbed so fast on the projects because we're so far behind. I mean, and the thing that I would like to get you as a Transportation Committee to focus on is that the half-cent sales tax, that the voters approve it, and I think if we educate them and we're all united in it, they will. If we're not, they won't. And the transportation impact fee that hopefully the council will adopt in the month of June are going to be completely complementary. And we're talking about just looking at the priority projects that people had input in. Highway 42, the state doesn't have enough right-of-way now to go 4 lanes or 5 lanes. They may have enough to go 3 if we do take care of the sewer problem, like on 73. So in order to construct that project and to utilize those $8 million from the federal government, somebody's got to come up with some right-of-way to do that. So the construction and the right-of-way acquisition are completely complementary. One ties into the other one. We won't get 4 lanes there. 44, which you guys have talked about a lot, I met with them many, many times. That project was supposed to have been let in October of 04, July of 05, and now it may be let in 06. There's no guarantee it's going to be let as a 2-lane just reconstruction. And what they tell me is the reason it went from 4 to 3 is that the acquisition cost for right-of-way in that area now, that property's gotten a lot more expensive. Now, not as expensive as 42, so I'm using 2 examples, but just to show that acquisition costs now, and I think Tom mentioned this on one specific project in Mandeville, we're seeing that now in the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the committee that I sit on, the Transportation Policy Committee. Certain areas of the greater Baton Rouge area now, we are approaching the point where we're paying almost as much for the land to widen the road as we are to construct the road. And if you need to meet with the Capital Region Planning Commission to grasp that, or if you need to see some plans or numbers from the Department of Transportation, we're happy to invite you to some of those meetings. You're always invited to them. But so when you start approaching, say you're using $10 million for construction, and you're going to go 4 lanes from 2, and you're going to need another $10 million for acquisition cost, and it may only be a 2 miles of roadway. And Old Hammond Highway, y'all familiar with that part, we did 2.1 miles. Well, the construction cost, I think, was $9.3 million, not including the utility relocation or the right-of-way acquisition. Now, 42 is not quite as heavily populated as that part of Old Hammond was in Baton Rouge, but it's getting close. And so when we're talking about if it's from 930, Doug, or from 44, or all the way from the Port Vincent Bridge, at 8.1 miles. 8.1 miles. If we're truly talking about 5 lanes, which is probably what we need to address the problems of the past and prepare for the future, that 8.1 miles are going to probably be in the tune of $40 to $50 million construction cost, and it may be half that much or more just to buy the right-of-way, to go from the 2 lanes to the 4 or 5 lanes. And so these are the issues that are very real, and the thing that I hope we as a legislative body and executive body agree on is that these plans will be complementary. I mean, these projects will be tied into impact fees if it's a turning lane or if it's a right-of-way acquisition or if it's putting shoulders on a state road, it will tie into the construction project. And that's why we want to get it that way, so the voters see that we're doing that, and it can't be used for anything else, because this is essential. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Ms. President Hughes, I can understand, Kent's concern. I'll just use 42 since you're using that as an example, okay? 42 is in the same district that the impact fee would be for my area. We're fixing to do a big subdivision called Renaissance on 73, and it's going to empty on Duplessis. going to definitely have an impact on 73 and Duplessis. The money collected there in those homes needs to be spent there and not buying right away on 42. So we have a big problem there in the spending of this money. 42 is going to need an awful lot of money for right away, and it's not going to have enough development there to substantiate that right away. So we're going to have to come up with some other means to buy the right away there too.
Well, and it will be. I mean, you heard. I think it was Kent made the comment about the state's condition, and I've spent a lot of time in Washington and with our state people, and it's absolutely true from what I have been told personally, that one of the major concerns that the federal appropriators have is that the state of Louisiana will not be in a position to take advantage of the increased tax, the highway dollars coming our way in the current 5-year bill because of that 20% match. They say Louisiana does not look like they will have the matching funds to get those additional dollars that they put in the Transportation Equity Act of the 21st century, which is about really about 4.5-year bill because it had been over 2 years. The previous bill had lapsed. And so that's why we have been working so hard to come up with some local dollars, and so we can tell, Mr. Louisiana or Mrs. United States, we have in Ascension Parish a minimum of 20% of every $1 million you can send our way. Okay? And we're willing to use it to help ourselves to improve our roads. And I echo what Kent said. It's been absolutely proven, or it's certainly what we're being told by our legislative delegation, and I think we put a lot of pressure on them as well as our congressional delegation, but they're basically told us, do not expect many dollars for capacity projects. And capacity projects in our parish are probably our biggest need from a health and safety standpoint. So your example, Cheryl, Renaissance, sure. I mean, that's going to become a capacity problem because of all the new development. So when the state is telling us that less than 4 years now that the 16 cents that's dedicated for gasoline per gallon, and the other 4 cents is dedicated to the time program in Ascension Parish. In fact, the East Baton Rouge Liberty to the Ascension, we have no projects in the time program, those 4 cents. The other 4 cents per gallon of gasoline is collected. So, Todd, I'd be happy to show you a study that I asked the MPO to do 2 years ago of all the gasoline, the state and federal tax generated in Ascension Parish from the sales of gasoline, and how much comes back to our parish in the form of highway improvements. And it was obvious, not just in Ascension, but the entire greater Baton Rouge metropolitan area, that we were not getting our fair share. And it's only gotten worse in the last 2 years, probably. So, I wish we had a solution other than us coming up with local dollars for some of these. But I haven't found it, nor have I seen anyone else come up with a plan in the parish to address these issues. And like I think Bill said, if we don't address these problems now, they're going to get continuously worse in this parish, unless we say completely no growth whatsoever, and we can understand the ramifications of that. We're trying to do away with all new development in Ascension Parish. So I hope, and if you do 3 districts for the impact fee, obviously a road like a 73 or a 74 is going to probably cross through more than one district. 22 or whatever road we think of, Highway 30. 73 obviously is a part of, I guess, George's district, part of Cheryl's district, and some maybe be in Jared's district. I don't know exactly those boundaries have been. And the impact or the congestion problems in that part of the parish impacts people coming from the southern part of the parish, obviously, trying to get to Baton Rouge or wherever they're going to work, getting through those areas. So there is a direct correlation of a benefit to all of our citizens who travel through those areas. And And I just remind all of you that, so right now, our state constitution forbids us of even letting our citizens vote on a local option gasoline tax similar to the state and federal excise tax. It's against the law in Louisiana to ask our citizens to vote on something like that. And so we don't have a lot of choices within our constitution now. And with what we're being told out of Washington and Louisiana, as far as dollars coming our way, we have a lot more expectation of getting federal dollars, in my opinion, and I think URS will agree with that, than we do state dollars. In fact, the state, from what I can understand, has very few dollars other than what they get from the federal government now in these transportation plans. So, and I don't want us to get hung up on if we use our money for impact or for right of way, if we use our money for donating land, if we use our money for paying for engineering. If we can just show that we have a 20% match, and that gives us more federal dollars, I think that's a benefit to our citizens and to all of us. And I can't guarantee you, whoever asked the comment, I think it was Todd, by guaranteeing that we can just send a bill to the state and say, this is the work we've done on state roads in Ascension Parish. We'd be grateful one day if you try to pay some of it back. And that's what Baton Rouge is telling me they're doing with their green light plan. Once they finish, they're going to send a bill to DOTD, and maybe some future governor and some future legislature may say, okay, we got the money now, we're going to reimburse Ascension Parish for some of that. But I'm not going to hold my breath for that to happen.
We need to get back to
Thank you.
to our meeting here. You said you had some
Thank you.
other comments.
And believe me, I'm fine with the priority projects. I'm fine with the bond issue projects. And we can move forward on that. We'll get money for that, and we need to take care of that. But again, for one thing, we've already had meetings, discussed, and agreed to 3 districts in this parish. I expect us to be moved forward with 3 districts. That's passed. That's done. We're waiting for a report with Charles Landry about impact fees. He's already told us what that can and cannot do, and I have a pretty good understanding of that, and it's not what is said here. The other thing, again, we have on the plan, Highway 44, again, for what we talked about, is not being put there for any type of widening or improvements there, which that would be fine if you can make a truck route, because you don't include in the bond issue the Highway 22 extension, which if you had that and you made that a truck route, these gas trucks and the industrial trucks coming off the bridge could take that route and go to the interstate there, and then Highway 44 without shoulders or without any improvements could be just a residential highway.
That's in the program.
That's not in the.
Well, it's in.
That's not in the bond
master
issue.
program.
It's in the master
But
plan.
we didn't have it as one
But
of
for
the
the
bond
next
components.
20 years, it's not in the bond issue. So for the next 20 years, you won't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be realistic.
Now, what is that in the industrial corridor that would connect 44
And that would have to be a truck route to take care of the trucks the other way,
in that direction, yeah.
from the industry. But you need them from the other way, from the bridge in that area, from the River Road and and Motiva and all the gas trucks. Because you're talking about a curvy road in going to be a highly populated area with no shoulders, and it's very unsafe conditions. And you got gas trucks riding it every day. And so because of that, I think you should have, and other industrial trucks carrying hazardous cargo, you should have a truck route on some other route if you're not going to improve 44 significantly. If you're not going to do Highway 22 with making it a truck route, then you should improve 44 significantly as part of your plan, because something has to be done about those trucks. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
Okay. That's a good point for discussion. I just want to explore
So,
a
I
little
mean,
bit
I just
further.
throw that out there. I'm not.
Well, I want to explore it a little bit further. Again, the reason, I guess our logic behind not showing anything in the bond program, the initial bond sales, relevant to 44 was the fact that,
Right.
good
I
Lord
understand.
willing, this is going to be let to construction this year. And we'll have a brand-new improvement out there within, I don't know, 24 months or so.
And I
And
agree.
then we would come back, a year later, after it's been tore up, under construction for 2 years, and they just got a brand-new surface, and then a year or two later, we would start tearing it up again and widening.
I think
it
people
again.
would be tickled pink if you put shoulders on that road.
If you came back with
Yeah.
reconstruction.
If they put shoulders on it, that would be fine. They wouldn't mind you working on it for 2 more years because it's dangerous if you ever had to turn there, and everyone there
Okay.
knows. But that's just something to
Yeah. That would be true, but the other option you're throwing out there is you're saying, but if we extend 22, that
then
takes
leave
the-
it.
that
Then that's
takes the-
fine. That takes the
Then we
trucks
can
off the
live
road.
with 44
As it is.
as reconstructed for that,
Because then
until
it
it reaches
becomes-
capacity. I mean,
then it
it's not going
becomes
to
a
be that long,
residential
and it's
road.
going to get to a capacity problem because of all the development that's starting to happen south of 10.
Because then your impact fees will take care of the residential increases because you'd be dealing with turning lanes and things of that sort. You wouldn't have to spend all that other money on everything else. So you could solve that problem that way. Instead of increasing the size of 44, you would just do your turning lanes and things with impact fees, and you could use your truck routes as an alternate to relieve the truck route problem
Okay.
and the extra capacity there. And so you might end up spending less money in the long run.
All right, so we've got, it looks like two reasonable options. One is to just go ahead and add the shoulders to 44,
Make it safe enough.
make it part of the bond program. Second thing would be to come back and just put the 22 extension in place to take the truck traffic off of 44.
Right.
Okay.
Then that makes it safe enough as a residential route.
Okay.
Tom,
Yes, ma'am.
can I ask you, the 124 or 125 million that you were talking about here, that is including impact fees, or is that just the money that we would get from the sales tax?
They're
So-
just construction costs,
That's sales tax dollars.
right, just bonds.
That's
I mean,
just sales
that's
tax
the bond
dollars.
proceeds. Yeah, that's the bond proceed.
But you're saying that you would need other money to get these projects complete besides
yeah.
that?
Big money.
Well, you would need the money for the right-of-way acquisition.
Probably another 125 to 130 million, probably.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know what that exact dollar amount would be, and I wouldn't want to necessarily guess at this point.
Well,
But there will be some if there's not another mechanism to acquire the right-of-way, then this overall program would probably have to be reduced because we would have to also acquire the right-of-way under this program. That'd be understood.
And
I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to get some of these figures in my head straight. In the parish president's State of the Parish address, he says that the impact fees would generate approximately $100 million.
Okay.
And my calculations come up to they said 2.5 million a
yeah,
year.
but that's over how many years?
20
20 years.
20 years would be 50 million at 2.5 million.
Yeah.
And then it says the proposed 1/2 cents parish-wide dedicated sales tax for transportation approximately 285 million. And so we're coming up here tonight and you're saying 125 is what we're
According
going to
to
do.
your-
So, I mean, these figures don't even come close.
Yeah, according to your financial consultant, I forget the name of Jim Ryan, and that firm, that based upon the requirements to set a bond issue, you have to have a degree of conservatism in there. They want to make sure that they can pay it back. They have to cut another 20%. He has a lot of conservatism in that estimate. And in his estimate for a 20-year bond, half in sales tax, assuming all of the bells and whistles and safety valves you have to have, it would generate about $100 million.
Yeah, the net proceeds.
You would
be
have
about
that
$100 million.
available.
Yeah.
Right,
Let
available.
me
It
just-
may actually generate more. Mr. Hellenbeck brought up a very good point about increased growth and sales tax, that those dollars, but there's a degree of conservatism that he has to include in that calculation for the bond commission and actually go up.
Because with this growth comes extra cost. that you
Correct.
have.
Yeah, one
Okay.
thing, Mr. Chairman, you need to understand, when you bond the funds, it's different than pay-as-you-go, obviously. If you collect, let's say, an average of $10 million a year, over 20 million years, if you're paying as you go, that's $20 million. I mean, that's $200 million. But if you bond those dollars, your net proceeds are going to be significantly less than $200 million. But the advantage is you get the money right up front, and you can construct those projects over the 3 to 5, 8-year period, and you're going to get more buying power in those early years. In future years, with inflation, costs are going to escalate, and that $200 million in year 20 is not the same as 100. It's more equivalent to whatever it's equivalent to in present day value is what you bond the dollar down to, and that's what your net proceeds work out to be.
Okay, if say the impact fee is not going to be used like we thought for right-of-ways and utilities and stuff like that, and engineering costs, that it would be used, as Mr. Shakespeare says, for turn lanes and stuff as they come up. What other funds, what other funding would we do to be able to come up to the $125 million here in order to get these projects that you estimate to be $125 million? I mean, we need to know before we go to the people and ask for this money and bond the money out that we will have enough money to do all of these projects in lieu that we don't have the impact fee as part of the funding.
Well, one thing I would like to mention, and I think maybe this should be considered, use the impact fees as appropriate. When there's a proposed development and a new intersection and left turn lane, right turn lane needs to be implemented, allow that to happen is one thing that you could do, and it may be mandated that you do that. But at the same time, I don't think you can say that they cannot be used for right-of-way acquisition, because certainly along 44 is going to be a prime example where clearly you're going to show with the proposed development you have in that corridor, there's going to be a need to widen that roadway. So right-of-way acquisition is certainly something that will be impacting the corridor.
And I understand.
I think you'll be able to do a combination of right-of-way acquisition and actual improved physical improvements in the corridor. The question is, how much money can we really justify for the right-of-way acquisition, and how much will go to immediate improvement?
Exactly, and I guess my point is, if we're going to do these projects, and we have $125 million project here that we're going to bond out, and we don't know where the impact fees are going to come from at this time or how fast they're going to be collected. So how do you, how can you say that we're going to get these projects done? Because even Highway 44, for instance, we're saying, all right, right now it's going to be overlaid and it's going to be done for a while in the present form that the state is doing. So the money that's generated right there in that particular area wouldn't be able to be used somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? And it may take years to get that little pot of money together. So I'm just concerned.
Let's assume we don't get.
I'm concerned about the money.
We can't use impact fees to acquire the right of way for the program. What impact would it have on the program? That's something we can look at. We can get you the information.
Because we need to know that up front before we go to the people with this. We need to make sure if we're going to do this type of project, that we're going to get enough money to do it.
Yeah, and we feel confident that we'll be able to do the majority. Keep in mind, we don't want to give anybody the impression that when you set up a program like this and you say, here's all these projects, and we guarantee in 5 years every single one will be done. A program of this magnitude, you're going to have projects that are going to have problems. Some of them aren't going to be able to get constructed. Some of them you're going to find things such as utilities or power lines that make the project not cost effective. There's no way you can sit there and guarantee every project, but I understand you want to have some reasonable degree of certainty that this is a reasonable dollar value to implement these projects, and we need to look the right way, and we can do that.
Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Hunter.
He's still not finished. He's still not
Oh, you still got the phone?
Mr.
Shake's still not finished.
Go ahead, Shake. I feel like I'm in my sixth grade class. Interrupted more.
And nobody's recognizing you, huh?
There's one more thing, and I think it's very important. I think due to the growth that we've had and the number of parish roads that we're taking in on a monthly basis, I think we should take a look and set aside a percentage of this money that's going to be dedicated to resurfacing parish roads.
Thank you.
To make sure that concerns of Councilman Lambert and others is that we will have enough money. We won't have to come up here and tell people over and over that we only have $2.8 million a year to do all of our roads, that we can take a percentage of this money, and I think you would get a lot of support from the people in the parish for this half-cent sales tax, if they would know that their road that's rutted up, we would have sufficient monies to overlay that or patch it or whatever else needs to be done.
This is over and above the current dollars that are
Right.
dedicated.
We
to
have
maintenance.
X amount of money, about $3 billion a year, that we use for overlays. And each councilman in their district gets, 1, 2, maybe 3 roads if they're lucky, and they're looking and driving on a bunch of bad roads. And so it's hard to explain to the people that we may get around to you at some point in time, and we have no means, we're going to increase your taxes, but we have no means of taking care of these roads. And how many we took in last month? About 19 more?
20 something.
20 more in 1 month. And so we need to be prepared for when those roads come to the point that they need to be resurfaced. Right now, you drive through Pelican Point, and it's pretty bad. And there's other subdivisions that I know just in my district that the roads are getting bad, and there's a substantial amount of resurfacing to be done, a lot more than $3 million. And so we need to make sure that in the future we have some money set aside for that. That ought to be our priorities. We're gonna take care of the parish roads first. Second, we use impact fees that the mostly out-of-town people are going to pay for the impact that they make over here. That ought to be second. And third, we come through with our bond issue for everything else that we have. And that ought to be what we look for as our priorities for everything. I mean, that's our responsibility. And I agree. I sat in the same meetings Mr. Hughes did and everyone else did, where our state delegation essentially told us, don't look for no help from the state because money's not coming. And so we know that. But we're going to do what we can. We're going to come up with a half cent, and after we take care of our local roads and our impact fees with the people that coming in, then we're going to get on the state roads and do whatever we can and get as much monies as we can to match it and make those monies go as far as we can. And then that's all we can do. And then we go and we're going to tell people, call your state representative, call your state senator, and call your congressman, because that's all we can do. But I mean, we can't. First of all, we got to take care of our priorities, and that's all I got to say.
Ken, was there a percentage, or rather the impact fee or the half cents that you would deem more appropriate to take some maintenance cost out of there? Or
10%?
You can't take it out of
impact
maintenance
fees.
out of impact fees.
No, I understand.
I mean,
we're
we've gotten to the point where we've.
Let me clarify one thing that you may not be thinking of, and that is the increase in sales tax that we already receive is proportional with the growth of these new subdivisions. In other words, we get a new subdivision in, we got 3 roads in that subdivision. Well, along that road, you might have 200 houses going up. The increase in sales tax that we receive from those 200 houses that we already have is proportional with the amount of roads that we're bringing in. And I'll give you an instance right now. We budgeted $2.5 million, but you go back and look at the increase in sales tax, we probably, it's your discretion, we can spend $3.5 million this year because of the increase in taxes, but we just budgeted 2.5. I mean, if y'all want to spend
But we probably
$3
have $8 million worth of roads that need to be resurfaced.
Not necessarily,
if you really
no.
go through them.
No, we don't. And you'd be surprised how many people are satisfied with our roads. In a lot of cases, and this is surprising, a lot of cases you're going to find minor defects in a road, a local road, where the people really don't want you to improve it too much because it's almost a way of slowing the people down. I mean, you'd be surprised how many complaints we get in about bad roads and subdivisions. We got a few, but we figure the sales tax that's generated is more than enough to surface the roads. And again, right now we probably got $3.5 million we can spend on it. We just budgeted $2.5 million, and you can increase that if you want to. In fact, next year we probably will. And last year was $4 million. So again, it's proportional. When you bring a new subdivision road in, they got people living there, sales tax that we already received goes up. And
So
we
what
should
you're
have-
saying is that the amount of influx that we're getting and the increase in the amount of roads, we should be able to keep up with it with our increase in sales
Yes,
tax.
we do. And the other thing is
Well,
this.
Whenever I
is
come next year, I'm a,
we,
Make sure you remember the word should.
Should.
yeah,
ruin
It's
Mr.
just-
Shake's
I
time.
will, because I've got a list
And
of
I'll
my
say
next year
something
that's
else on
very
that one when I
bad,
get a
and
chance,
people are
Madam
not
Chair.
complaining
The-
about trying to fix them.
and again, it's a priority. Well, again, this is the fact that, we can budget just about, look at the budget and see how much increase in sales tax, and we can budget it more.
One of the other issues I know that everybody's a little familiar with also is that, and it's related, although maybe not directly, is looking at improving the section that a lot of the new developers, as they come in, and, part of the problem is that some of the typical sections, and then we're getting heavy concrete trucks, and the amount of traffic and stuff very quickly are deteriorating those roadways. So that has to be, in other words, you have so many you're taking in now, not much you can do about what you got. You got to go out and repair. I agree with you. But that may be something you want to look at, too, is to reevaluate what actually goes into it, so which section.
Well, and I don't want to, beat a dead horse, but you're looking at probably next year. I mean, there are a lot of complaints this year, but next year we're going to have to do something substantially with Pelican Point, because the roads are failing, and that's a lot of roadway. And you have other subdivisions, the Donaldsonville area and other. That's just areas that I know about that I'm
Existing.
and I know they're all over the parish, and so I think that's gonna happen, and I just think that we need to be prepared for it, and we can always, if we see that we're having a great deal of monies, you're talking about being conservative, we need to be conservative from the standpoint of let's take care of our parish roads, be conservative, and we come up here and we give our wish list, and we see that, hey, we have some monies left over, we can put in there that they should go to the master transportation plan and fulfill that. And then, then our duties are done. What we're supposed to do first is take care of parish roads. And so I just want to make sure that we do that, and that we're adequately funded. And if you want to add in there that if we have monies left over on that yearly basis, it goes to this fund, I agree with you 100% that it should go to that program. And we can do that, but we should make sure that we have adequate funding.
There's just an idea, up to 10% of the bond proceeds could be dedicated to maintenance if necessary.
That's for you guys to decide. That's why we pay you guys. Y'all come up with something that's going to be adequately funded.
I have to say one thing, and because it's brought up several times, the reason Pelican Point roads are bad because of poor construction.
Right.
Number one, and we didn't have adequate inspection of that. And as you know, Councilman, because you've been involved with it lately, and that is the heightened subdivision construction standards that we're about ready to implement. And by doing so, we're looking at that in pavement management. We're looking at a road lasting 10 and 12 years instead of 3 or 4 or 5 over the last few years. So what we're putting our efforts in is not so much how are we going to fund to go pay for going and resurface some of these bad roads because the construction was bad. We're looking at picking up our inspection and standards on these roads when they're under construction to make sure they last 10 and 12 years.
Yeah. And that's going to help us in the next 10 or 12
and
years.
that's why we're anticipating
we're doing a good job.
Our proportionate funding for these resurfacing of roads to actually go down percentage-wise
yes, it will.
Per mile of road that we have in the parish over the next few years because we're raising the standards.
So what's going to happen in the next 8 or 10 years, you're going to see a higher percentage of local monies being able to be put in this bond program. Because we are doing, I want to compliment Mr. Rue on the subdivision specifications. We're trying to get that through. There's a lot of work has been done on there, and it's going to help the parish considerably. Some people are not going to be too happy with what they have to do to build a road, but that's something we have to do because of the failures we're having, and make sure people know that. When some people do complain about it, it's just something that we have to do, be responsible. And
Mr. Lambert has
that's
been
it.
so patient.
Yeah,
Your
Mr.
turn,
Hunt.
Mr. Lambert.
One of Kent's comments is what I'm wanting to talk about. We've talked about Highway 44 and putting shoulders on the highway. Well, I don't think our impact fees could be used for that, according to what Charles Landry told me, because they need shoulders on that road right as we speak. So that's not something new. Impact fees can only be used for something new, which is 3-laning, turn lanes. As far as a road that needs a repair on it right now, or, you know, I don't think that could be used on that.
Well, I was really thinking more toward the right-of-way.
Yeah, but y'all had mentioned,
An additional
you had
right-of-way,
mentioned,
because I think we're going to be able to justify a capacity improvement on it based on the.
but just to let you know, certain ways we can spend as impact fees, and that's a lot of, you know, if you sit in with Mr. Landry on it, and he'll specify, you know, mostly for new construction, which is 3-lane, 4-lane turn lanes. That's the only way you can use these impact fees. Yes, you can buy the right-of-ways for these 3-lane, 4-lane highways, but, you know, that could take years down the road before you see the progress on them. Thank you.
And I appreciate the comment. We will make sure that we more clearly understand exactly the impact fee issues, make sure that they dovetail more effectively into the program.
Appreciate it. Councilman Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what Kent said, going back to a statement about calling a state representative, but I also think we need to carry it to another level here. And what I'd like to see is URS to go back and revisit the project list of the bond component. Obviously, you know, you've heard from us tonight. You know, there's some corrections to be made and some things to be rethought. What I would propose and would love to see, Mr. Chairman, is another working meeting. I'd like to invite our state delegation to come down here and participate in this meeting as well. And I know, I'm sure they're doing everything they can to bring us funding, but I'd like them to come down and participate. It's just strictly an invitation to participate, and we're going to go over this project list, and we're going to talk about state dollars. Now, I know the Revenue Estimating Committee just came up with another $400 million for the state, and the state is fixing to pass a $21.7 billion project. I realize we're a poor state, and we need to help the poor, but we also need our state dollars for infrastructure and for economic development. I did a little research, and I'm going to be real brief, but this is for our citizens at home that's watching this. In Louisiana, and I'm doing this from my memory, so forgive me if I'm off a few million. Louisiana has 4.5 million residents, give or take, and that was pre-Katrina. $21.7 billion budget. States of Alabama and Colorado both have approximately 4 million people. And as I best recollect, they had like 11 to $12 billion budgets. State of Mississippi with 2.9 million residents, a $6 billion budget. So my question is where is all this money being spent? And I think it goes back to we are a poor state, and I think we're trying to help the poor, and that's good and that's noble, and I think we have a responsibility to do that. But if we do not get our share of dollars for economic development, for infrastructure, so that economic development can happen, we will not move forward. And we are being quickly left behind from other states. It's sad when you visit other states and you see what they have and you see what Louisiana has. Well, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Councilman Hill.
Yeah, while he's talking about that, we had the privilege of having Mr. Roy Quazer at one of our meetings. I think it was a strategic committee meeting. Did he come to one of them? Anyway, I asked him the question about, being able to fund federal match dollars, and he said it was a good possibility what was coming out of the, transportation bill this year. So he couldn't promise me, but he said it's a very good possibility.
President Hughes, you wanted to say something?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman. I think you had mentioned the $285 million and the differences. I want to make sure we all understand that. The $285 million was derived by projecting out for 20 years by our finance department, as well as Mr. Ryan, our financial advisor, I think, as far as what we thought that tax would generate like the first year, and then with inflationary factors, with the growth factors, we arrived at a figure about $285 million. Now, obviously, that's dependent upon growth trends, and that's peaks and valleys, depending on the regional and national economic cycles. So, now on the impact fee of $100 million, that was going back, as I recall, 6 years, looking at the planning and development department numbers. Only if we would have had an impact fee for the previous 6 years, what would that annualized regulatory fee brought in? And of course, those numbers have changed significantly since then. With the you should have received today a copy of the impact fee ordinance that you'll be asked to introduce Thursday night. Such things as mobile homes, such things as family petitions with reduced rates. And at the time we did those projections with Mr. Duncan, when they first came in, they were using, as I recall, like a flat rate of about $2,000 a lot, based on what they had done in St. Tammany Parish and what they're talking about with East Baton Rouge Parish now. But those numbers have changed to where we have some as small as, I think, about $1,400 a lot for a smaller home, up to maybe 22, 23, I think is the max. I'd have to look at it again. Plan on reading that again tonight. So you should have got that day, the latest, the 12th version of the impact fee ordinance with those numbers in there. So obviously those could change the amount of money that would come in. So we took that 6 years and tried to project it forward 20 years with census recommendations on what they thought our population would do. And this was all done really with pre-Katrina population and numbers. Even though the State of the Parish address was given in February, we're getting conflicting reports from Louisiana Tech and the Census Bureau on what our population is now and what they think it'll be. The numbers, if you've seen the chart that URS put up, is some pretty conservative growth numbers for population based on what some of the estimates are now after the storms in this whole East Baton Rouge, Livingston, Ascension area. So I wanted to clarify that, make sure y'all understand that $285 million was derived that way. And the half cent, and somebody mentioned we have a half-cent sales tax now currently dedicated for roads, and we have 2/3 of a half-cent, with 1/3 of that half being dedicated for fire service. And it's true in 03 and 01, excuse me, 02 and 03, it only brought in about $2.8 million for dedicated road tax, of 2/3 of a half-cent. Then 04 it began to come up. And, of course, 05 it came up significantly, especially after the storm. So if you recall the state of the parish, Ms. Fontenot, we stated in there, and we showed you the chart, that the last 10 years to try to get at least a decade of numbers, not just 4 or 5 years, that tax brought in about $45 million, dedicated 2/3 of a half-cent. And now if the current trends in sales tax continues, that tax will go up significantly to take care of the maintenance needs that Kent and Todd have been talking about on the parish roads. And our intent was to only use that money for that, to make sure we do take care of those parish roads that are not in the master transportation plan from a maintenance standpoint. And then we'll be asking you real soon to increase the standards for payments and subdivisions and things so that we can begin to offset some of the damage that's occurring when a new development is mostly built out from the front in time to maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 years before that development is completely finished. The front part of that development, the roads are really destroyed. So we got a 1-year maintenance. I've asked Mr. Landry, say, can we legally extend that to X number of years before we take that road in, based on the anticipated time for that development to be completed. And I've heard Pelican Point talk about, and I live in that area. It's still not completely developed, and it's been, I guess, 10 years now. It'll probably be several more years before it be completely built out. And so that's the issue we try, increasing the amount of soil and concrete that goes into that road to begin with, and then looking at extending that time frame before we have to or need to accept it into the parish system. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Parish President. I just wish that, that you would bring us some more conservative numbers, because unless I'm missing it, we were told $2.5 million is what we would bring in an impact fee. And over 20 years, I figured that to be about $50 million instead of $100 million.
Yeah, but I remind you now, that was based on the last difference. 6 years of growth. Okay, establishing that baseline was based on the past 6 years. Okay, going forward 20 years, with the, and just an example I gave you in the parish president report, your last council meeting, through through May 17th of this year, we had 697 new residential building permits. Through the same time period last year, May 17th, I think it was 477. So you see, and that's about a 50% increase from just year to date last year to this year. Now, we didn't project it that much when we come up with that 100 million, but we did project a sizable increase based on demographics and population trends and talking to realtors and what was happening in the real estate market in our parish. In addition, the commercial new construction permits for commercial were 22 last year, May 17th. This year it's 59. And so a significant amount of the impact fees is going to come from the commercial sector. Now, and please keep in mind that, you know, anytime you're doing projections like this, you're not going to be exactly right. But we're hoping that I would like to see the impact fee as far as dollars be almost nothing if we could get the developers and the new builders to do credits and put in the infrastructure.
I understand,
that would be probably better.
Just to keep things on a level playing field, okay? It's hard when we're told 2.5 million and we do the math and then we read something else. Let's just get our numbers straight.
Oh, our numbers are straight, Ms.
Bring them back to us the next time, you know.
No, they are straight. I want to make sure you understand that.
We're talking about $285 million, and you're saying they're being conservative with just that we're expecting 100 million in 20 years.
Well,
and they're going to go up to 25.
The numbers are
That's
straight.
A big difference.
Well, it is, but make sure you read the complete thing or listen to the entire talk. It was the 100 million was based on the last 6 years. We projected forward the next 20 years with a significant increase in growth of people we talked to. There's no guarantee of that, but certainly in the last year, I think it's certainly a testimonial that we are experiencing that growth. Now, on the half-cent sales tax, if the growth continues like it is, the 285 million will prove to be pretty conservative. Now, is that going to continue? None of us really know. But the thing you need to keep in mind when Mr. Ryan established a benchmark of what he thinks we should bond or what the bond markets will feel good about selling for Ascension Parish in the marketplace, number one, the impact fees are not put in there at all, because he says you really can't go bond money on that impact fee anticipation. And then secondly, I think Tom said 80, but I think it's really only 75% is going to be bonded. Now, in addition, and the reason we tie all this into the master transportation plan, it is anticipated that a lot more revenue will come in, okay, than what's in that bond call. You know, make sure you follow this carefully. It's been talked about, but I'm not sure we really listened to it. Now, that revenue, since it's part of that half-cent dedicated sales tax, even though it hasn't been bonded or indebted, will still have to be tied in and can only be used for those transportation plans, those projects in that transportation plan. So that the citizens get what they vote for if they vote to do that. So I conservatively stand before you, if our growth continues like it has, we will bring in $285 million in the half-cent sales tax, which would mean we may have more that's not bonded than we have bonded. But all that money still has to be used for these projects. And so it's important that you and all of our citizens understand that could happen that way very easily. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments from anybody else?
And I'll let Tom speak a little bit too, but I'm sorry, had a comment?
Sure.
I was just going to say, appreciate the URS and what you've done here tonight. And I echo Mr. Hillensbeck as far as our state delegation needs to be brought into it. Of course, they're going to come in here looking at chops in, and we take care of all the state roads, which is why I kind of believe Mr. Shakespeare is right as far as this money being set aside for parish roads. And I know Mr. Roof don't hear all the complaints because we hear them, but he sure hears enough from us as far as the parish roads and some deplorable situations they are. We are improving the parish roads naturally, but there's a lot to do too, and that's what this council's here for, parish business. I was a little confused, and I think Mr. Hillensbeck corrected me on this. The available federal funds, as you guys have got it here, the $8 million for LA 42, the 1.32, 2.4, and the $4 million. I don't know what it totals, about $15 million. That includes Mr. Lambert's $3 million that he says, because that wasn't adding that up. That was left over from the project. Is that right?
That includes the demonstration money or high priority money that's in the last two transportation bills.
Right. And primarily, that's all we have at the present time that is pretty much agreed upon that we're going after as far as matching funds we could match, right?
Well, we're going to continue to pursue anything and everything, additional demonstration projects, grants, whatever we can. We're just saying conservatively, we know that, these are the dollars that are identified.
Yeah, I think there's some other avenues that we definitely need to explore, and we'll continue to explore those options between now and hopefully if this program goes through. But even after the program goes through, we want to still continue to look at ways to leverage federal dollars. And other programs, for instance, in Jefferson Parish, I know that that program's been in place for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they're continuing every day to look at alternatives, and they've found other options during the course of the program to find federal funds and use local dollars to match those federal funds and use them more innovatively. And you would continue to do that throughout the whole process. This is just stuff. These are federal dollars that we know are either out there as demo projects or they're programmed in the TIP, and they look like there's a very good probability that these federal funds will be available to support this project development. But certainly there's other avenues that we will pursue and try to leverage it.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong it. I just want to thank you fellas, thank the councilman here around the table for good dialogue. I think it was some good dialogue here tonight, and hopefully we can move forward.
Question, Cheryl. What about the idea of them going back and revisiting the numbers? And let's try to have maybe another special meeting. Cheryl, would you consider that call another special meeting? And let's invite our delegation. I mean, I'd like for them to get in here and let's all roll up our sleeves. And they need to see these projects firsthand. They need to feel the angst around this table. Okay.
Tom, I'll get with y'all on that to set up a meeting to see where we're going to go with it, later on this week.
I want to make one point. We did mention it, but I want to reiterate, we have met with our state delegation.
Yes.
In fact, we set up an initial meeting, and they were in legislative session. They weren't able to come here. We actually went to them, met at the Capitol with them. We had a very good discussion. We had pretty good attendance, and we're more than willing to go ahead and meet with them again. The only thing I would venture to say, they are still in session. I don't know when the session ends, but it's going to be very difficult to get them here. I mean, I don't mind trying. I'm just not so sure.
We have to wait till after the session.
Yeah, they definitely want to participate, and they made the meeting. And
I think it'd only be fair that they have an opportunity to come out and maybe explain why we can't get more state dollars for infrastructure.
Okay.
And I'm sure they're going to have some things that they can enlighten us with.
They're getting a lot more roads from us than they get from the state. Right. I think they can come from Baton Rouge to here to get them.
And look, I appreciate what they're doing. I know they got a tough job, but I really think this needs to be a co-effort here.
We understand. I'd like to add that certainly I'm hearing Councilman Valentine's sentiments there. We really appreciate the input from the Transportation Committee. I want to understand, as I explained before, we had a blank canvas, and we had to put some paint on it, and we need the dialogue. And I know at times it gets heated, but that's what's needed. We have to have that dialogue to better understand, to make sure we're all on the same page. As Parish President noted, if we don't go together united with a plan that we all agree on, then there's no reason to move forward. We certainly need to make sure we're all on the same page and move forward. I know there's complexities to these issues, the impact fees and the half-cent sales tax, the amount of dollars generated and whatnot. And I think the gist of today is to get everything out on the canvas, to get everything discussed. We do have a little homework to go back and do to modify some things and look at some of the comments and responses we got from y'all today. see about getting the state delegation to come down and meet with us. And I did want to add that it was expressed by you and the administration that we're looking somewhere in the fall to go to a ballot measure to the people to decide on this issue and have some sales tax, et cetera. In order to do that, I believe Mr. Jimron has indicated that somewhere end of June, July is when we have to go to the bond commission. So back to Mr. Hellensbeck's comment is that we probably do need another, I know in 2 weeks we have another transportation committee meeting, but if one's needed beyond that, then certainly we need to do whatever we need to do to come together to consensus as quickly as possible to make sure we meet that agenda that you guys kind of set forth earlier.
You can try to have one, see if you can get them there for the, I think it's the 13th.
Correct. Right.
The next transportation meeting. And if that date is not a good one, if Tuesday's not good and we need to make it for the Monday or the Wednesday, I think most of the guys around here would be, it doesn't have, normally we meet on the second Tuesday, but we would have to have an advance notice so that we could let Ms. Suzanne know to post it. But we could be flexible for the next transportation meeting to have it on either the Monday or the Wednesday maybe. The Thursday would probably be out because we meet on that day for the council work.
We'll get with you. We'll try and coordinate that. Not that any of you guys would be shy, but certainly don't be shy. And if you have issues or questions or comments that come to mind after the fact, please give us a call.
I think Ken had something else he
And
wanted to say.
Just one more thing, in interest of time, I got right down to the point, and I don't want it to seem like we come off as being anti-anything. I think we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to get to the same place, and I am in support of impact fees because I think it's something, we were the one that really started it as a means of helping the people in the parish, and I think it's a no-brainer that we have to do something on the half-cent sales tax to get these projects going. So it's just a question of we're having a working meeting, and a working meeting, things need to be said. We need to get together, and hopefully we can be all on the same page in the next one.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I want to thank you guys because I think for having a blank sheet of paper to start a project on, you did a very good job with the first draft of roads. I agree with Councilman Shakespeare. We probably do need to add that little section of 22. There may be some other tweaking and stuff that need to be done, but out of the overall list, I thought you did a really good job of coming up with a big, main list that we could maybe work toward. I would like to see you, as I know Representative Eddie Lambert would, and that's try to do something with the interstate to get us further south, would relieve some of the traffic in the northern part. And I think traffic is the big issue. Some of the studies that I have show that we really don't have a road capacity problem overall in the parish, that it's more of a traffic congestion problem. And so that's some of the main things that we really need to deal with. So other than that, I think y'all did a great job. I appreciate all the time and effort that you've put into it, all the times that you've met with us on an individual level and for stakeholder meetings, etc. And I think you did a real good job of putting everything together. And we want to thank you as a group.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Mr. Root.
I think, and I'm going to talk, we're going to get together and talk about this. I think, and we're going to step it up a notch or two. I think we're going to ask URS to actually present several scenarios to us, and that is add in the acquisition and right-of-way costs, if in fact impact fees aren't used for it, because that's a reality. You're going to have, that has to be included in the construction. You're going to four-lane highway. Include that scenario in as part of the cost. Also include a reasonable expectation of matching funds, a conservative expectation, but a reasonable expectation, what we can get from the government, see what that total number is, and again, put it in scenarios. If this happens, this is how much the bottom line is going to be this is how much work we can do. So it can be a little bit more work for URS, but I think it'll give a clearer picture to the council exactly what we're looking at. Because leaving the right-of-way costs out, assuming that we can get impact fees to help pay for it, and if that doesn't happen, you have to realize that if you put it in, you only can do this.
Right.
Okay.
And one thing I would say that if we're going to bring this to the people have to be given a reasonable time for some of the projects to be completed. I mean, if we're going to bond it up front, so maybe you can kind of give us at least on maybe some of the major projects, about how soon we can expect to see the reality of the project.
Yeah.
Because
it's going to vary significantly depending on the current status of the project. Some projects are already in design, and they have some federal dollars allocated.
Well, if you
and they'll
can
move a
kind of
lot
give us an
quicker.
idea of which projects can get done quickly, which ones may take a little bit longer, about how long that they would take, all of that would help, especially if we're going to try to sell this to the Ascension Parish residents.
Great. Good point.
Thank you guys for coming.
Okay, thank y'all.
Okay, we're going to continue on to item number 6, discussion of 2006 road list project. I have Mr. Phil Garrett that would like to speak. Change your mind? Thank you. Okay. Mr. Rue?
Okay, we gave out the list, and I'm hoping you have it with you. We have been contacted, I guess, on a couple of roads only. I believe Blaine Road we're looking at for Councilman Dempsey Lambert. We really haven't had too much else, with the exception of explaining some of the stuff that we're going to do on Harris Savoy Road and the amount of work going on that. District 3 has, I think Mr. Thompson has no roads on the list, and I think Councilwoman Fontenot has no roads. Now, we haven't talked to y'all about it, and if y'all want to add something to it to accommodate those districts, we'll be glad to look at it and evaluate those roads. But
You haven't heard from Councilman Thompson?
no, ma'am.
I just ask that you review the list of 205 list and see if there's something in my district that's on that list already that can be accommodated with the funds that you have available. Otherwise, I'm good.
And again, I mentioned it a few minutes ago. It's your option to, if there are more roads that you want in this particular program, it can be added, and a budget amendment can be made to pick up that budget amount. But I want to tell you also that we're in the planning stages right now of the 2006, which we hopefully it can be engineered and started maybe before the end of the year. And if it is, we're going to be coming back to you and saying we want to up this budget another two.
And we would take that excess money and put it in there. I think that would be the best thing, because we have a pretty good list.
And this is not going to be the hopefully it won't be the only program started this year. We're going to have the 2006
This seems to
going.
be a more of a reconstruction and sectional patch repair type list anyway, which there's not a whole lot of roads that are, looking for this kind of construction work. What type of project will we do in 207?
Very similar. We're going to look at some of the local roads. We're going to try to do a little bit more. I said 2006 a minute ago, 2007. We're going to try to do some more parish connectors, some more major, what we consider major parish highways improvements. And again, we're compiling that list now, and we welcome input from the committee and the council member as we're preparing that list, because we're going to try to get it together and have it going to engineering the end of this year.
And Mr. Rue, this is a list that we're going to bid out for.
Actually, this is a list that we're doing in-house.
All right. Okay.
This is
all
the one
in-house.
Yeah, and we're going to have it ready hopefully in a month or two to go
Okay.
to bids, a couple months.
Good.
But at the same time, as soon as you accept this and we start moving into engineering on it, we're going to start compiling a list for the 2007.
Right.
And we're going to try to get it to engineering and completed engineering before the end of the year, so we can begin that construction project as soon as possible in 2007. Hopefully in March, have it ready to go and bid out.
Need a motion.
I move that we accept this proposed 2006 road construction project as listed.
Discussion.
Councilman Hillensbeth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill, we have the assets, we have the manpower to do the project like this in-house?
This is engineering. Engineering only. We're going to bid it out.
Okay, all right, okay, I misunderstood.
No, sir. And we're doing it with our own engineer and with the assistance of URS.
Right.
And together, we feel confident that we have no problem in doing the engineering of this.
Right. I'd like to add a road, and it's not in my district. I'm not sure if that, Todd, if it's your district or if it's Mr. Savoy's district, but it's Slick Lane. It's a gravel road with several very nice homes on it.
I don't think that's in the system even.
I believe it is.
On
Slick
six,
Lane.
on
off
621? I don't think that's in the system.
Did anybody bring it?
Because of the right-of-way issues at the time, and I can be,
I was told it was.
I can investigate that, but it's a serious right-of-way
But
issue.
it's a very short
Sure.
section of road.
I know the road.
About 700 feet is my estimate.
Let me investigate it, and I'll get back with you individually on it, and
We can put it in.
Well,
In fact, I brought it up, if you remember, I brought it up a couple of weeks ago and I had to look into it. But those people don't understand why the road can't be overlaid blacktop.
Since the next one is coming up, and they've got to investigate this, why don't you just let it go toward the next one? Councilman Valentine?
I was going to ask Mr. Rue, let's act on Mr. Shakespeare and Mr. Lambert's motion tonight, and we do have a transportation meeting on the 13th. Let's have this on the agenda for the 17th, I guess it would be, then, the
won't be-
16th.
Yes, and again,
To approve?
if you approve this list as it is, you have the option to come back and
Yeah.
add to it. But that gives us
And
the right to
gives
go
you some
ahead and
time to
begin.
investigate
Right.
what Mr. Hillensback is asking for,
If
find out
nothing
whose
else.
district is in, make sure that that's
Right.
exactly what
You
they
can-
want to do.
Again, you can add to it, but we can start the engineering on it.
That's correct.
Okay.
As soon as the council accepts this list.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any objections? Then Suzanne, you can put this list, on the 16th?
Not-
Yeah.
Next one
Or
is,
can it come under
next
the,
one is Thursday.
the
So it'll have to
transportation
be-
report?
It'll have to be the second. Yeah, 15th.
It's not on the agenda.
No. But it could come under my report.
That it will be.
Huh?
That it will be.
Okay.
Next one, 15th.
Any old business?
Real
Council.
brief, had some comments from some of the residents in Rhonda Place about the new signage y'all put up in there. Appreciate that, Bill. That, the old signs were faded and discolored and what have you, and we're pleased about that, so thank you.
Any other old business? Any new business?
On the old business, just let me,
Sure.
Councilman Valentine and I talked about it earlier and everything, just so everybody knows that we did find out about the no truck route issue, and the fact is, we determined that it doesn't take an ordinance, you already have the ability in the present ordinance giving you the right to place weight limits or truck routes or speed limit signs by the action of the council. So we're preparing the signage right now, and soon as we determine exactly the proper signage, we'll bring that back to the Transportation Committee at your next meeting.
Thank you.
And you just vote. We want to make sure that the proper signage is identified before we bring it back to you. We'll have that by the next Transportation
Bill.
Committee,
Thank you.
and then we'll take it to council.
Okay.
That's great. Suzanne, put that on the next transportation agenda also. That's the truck route on Swamp Road and Steep Road. Is it Steep Road?
If you're going to start talking about that, I got some.
No.
Well,
that's
sure you
that's
get in
the two
with
we've already
Mr.
talked
Bill.
about.
Well, I would
Talked about
suggest.
this years ago with Panama and.
I would suggest we just put on the agenda to discuss action on establishing no truck routes on Parish roads.
Okay.
And then we'll leave it up to you exactly which road you want to consider,
Okay.
and y'all vote on it and take it to
No
full
problem.
council.
That's fair.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Business.
New business, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, Bill,
Action on establishing ordinance.
No truck route on Parish road.
Bill, on Roddy Road, I was sitting in on a meeting prior to this, and it got brought up about the bridge, with the wooden bridge. Could you look at maybe some way of quietening that bridge? I know in about a year now, we're gonna have that bridge redone, but it is very noisy. It's slapping the slats pretty good, so if we could find some kind of way of quieting that bridge, Mr. Bargo asked me to bring it up.
We'll look at what we can do. What we
Okay.
don't want to do, and we discussed it earlier too, is the fact that we don't want to make a higher elevation of the bridge because it becomes more of a safety hazard because it's going over a hump. So we'll see what we can do without raising
Quiet it
elevation any.
Appreciate it, Bill. That was it, Mr. Chairman.
That's it?
Move to adjourn.